Good evening and welcome to the May 5th meeting of the Falmouth Zoning Board of Appeals here at Falmouth Town Hall. Before I begin my usual introductory statements, it's with a heavy heart that I need to say that our member Ed Van Kuren passed away last week. He was a well-liked and well-respected member of this board, serving since 2014. This board was just one of many volunteer activities that Ed participated in and around the town of Falmouth. He was a member of this board since 2014. He was a member of the Falmouth Elks. He was also a member of the Falmouth Veterans Council, and he participated a lot with the Otis Civilian Advisory Board. So I think I speak for everyone on the board when I say that he will be missed very much by us, and ask everyone to please join me in a moment of silence in honor of Ed. Thank you, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please silence their cell phones. I'll introduce the board, starting at my far right, your far left. It's Jerry Patamas, who is an associate member of the board. To his left is James Morse, who is a full voting member. To his left is Scott Zelinski, who is the board's vice chair. My name is TJ Hurry, I'm the chair of the board. To my left is Bob Dugan, who is the board's clerk. And to his left is Scott Peterson, who is an associate member. Also with us tonight is Lorian Stockman, who is the zoning administrator, and Ashley DeMello, who is the recording secretary for the night. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with applying the zoning bylaws for the town, and we consider requests for special permits, variances, and appeals as provided in the bylaws, which have been approved by town meeting and the Attorney General's office for the Commonwealth. All decisions the board makes are made through the public hearing process. Our goal is to hear testimony from the applicant, from the public, and also to allow a full and fair discussion of the project prior to rendering a decision. To begin each hearing, the clerk will read the public announcement of the hearing and then present any pertinent information from the file, such as referrals from town departments and summarizing correspondences to the board. The applicant or the applicant's representative will then have 15 minutes to make a presentation, and time may be extended by vote of the board. The board will then question the applicant, and the public will be invited to comment as well. Public comment should only be directed at the project itself. We ask you to please refrain from making any personal or derogatory statements. Public comment can include an opinion in favor, in opposition, or it might just simply be a question about the nature of the project. Chair will limit discussion in the interest of time in the event that comments become repetitive. All members of the public wishing to speak should wait to be recognized by the chair. Come to the podium to the left here, and we ask you to please state your name and address for the record, along with any question, comment, or concern that you may have about the project. We do limit public comment to 2 minutes per person, and while you're standing behind the podium, we do ask you to remain behind the podium and speak into the microphone. That microphone and these microphones up here are not meant for amplification purposes within the room. They are meant for those watching at home on FCTV. We will then either close or continue the hearing when the board is satisfied that enough information has been presented by testimony and in the file to make a decision. By motion and vote of the board, the hearing will be closed. In the alternative, we may continue the hearing to a future date and time certain. After a hearing is closed, no more testimony may be taken. And regarding board discussion and decision, the board may then further discuss the project among ourselves and a motion to deny or approve would be made and voted upon. Such a motion will include a summary of key findings and conditions. An affirmative vote of 4 members, which is a supermajority, is required for approvals of motions on special permits, variances, and appeals. A split vote, such as a 3-2 vote, would be a failure to carry and would result in denial of the project. Under Massachusetts general law, if a special permit is denied, the applicant cannot return to the board for 2 years unless the project is substantially different. Turning to the agenda for the night, we do have 2 continuations followed by 4 new hearings, and we do have a few items on our open meeting agenda. So up first for the night is public comment. This public comment period is meant for anything that is not on the agenda. So if you're here to speak on a project, just wait till the appropriate time in the evening. So for the time being, is there anyone out there with anything to say on something that is not on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, moving right along, we have the continuation of application 113-21, Miranda, 105 Redlands Road in East Falmouth, requesting a special permit/variance to allow a home occupation for indoor swimming lessons and aqua classes. Voting members on this are myself, Scott Zelinski, Bob Dugan, James Morse, and Scott Peterson.
Just for the chair, Mr. Peterson did fill out the Mullen rule for the one meeting that was missed.
Very good, thank you.
Also, just for the record, there were 2 emails submitted, but since it's closed, they will not be read into the record.
Okay. And who do we have for the applicant? Mr. McKenzie?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I believe that we're continued just this evening because you were waiting for an opinion from town council on whether you could continue this, allow our withdrawal without prejudice, and whether you could attach conditions to that. I believe that's the sole reason that we're here tonight.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
I understand that you've received something from town council. Since we're not privy to that, we're just waiting to hear what town council had to say.
Thank you. And just to Noreen, I suppose it was an official town council opinion, so,
It's just forwarded to the board members.
but as far as disclosing it would go, I mean, it's attorney-client privilege. As the board, we do have the decision whether we want to release that or not, or we could just
Right.
deliberate among ourselves. Thank you. Would anyone like to start conversation? We did leave it off last time that trying to figure out whether we could dismiss without prejudice, or if we did dismiss, attaching any conditions to that dismissal.
So I'm under the impression that if we did a straight withdrawal and we decided we wanted to attach conditions with it, which is what I would be in favor of, if we could, those conditions would not have any bearing on the case, because it's just accepting as a withdrawal. And if there was concerns about conditions, that I guess our choices would be either to do a withdrawal with prejudice or to just do a decision on the application.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say one thing.
Sure.
Please understand that we're asking for the withdrawal without prejudice, so we're not prejudicing Sandy, who got some bad information from people within this building, not within this board or anybody within this room, and filed this on her own.
Just for protocol, just for the chairman. So I don't know if we have to, we closed the hearing. So I don't have an issue if Mr. McKenzie wants to speak, but I think we would have to reopen the hearing. If we do reopen the hearing, I would also have to read the emails that came in on April 29th after we closed.
That's right. Mr. McKenzie, my apologies. I'd forgotten that we had actually closed the hearing.
Okay.
So if you want to reopen, I don't have an issue with it, just that I would then read the emails that came in on the 29th.
Okay. Any objection from the board to?
I would defer to the general consensus of the board to reopen.
No objection.
Any objection to reopen?
No objection.
No objection.
So I'll make the motion to reopen the hearing of application 113-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by James. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Shall we read everything into the record?
Yeah,
first?
so there was an email sent. This is Friday, April 29th. And this is from Melinda Bowers. She writes that she was curious about which bylaw Ms. Miranda plans to apply for under her business within our residential neighborhood. Also, how is it possible that she is using a Courier Road address when her subdivision frontage is along Redlands Road? Again, that was from Melinda Bowers. And there was one more submitted, and this is from a Marsha Clattenburg at 135 Regis. Same day, Friday, April 29th. Good morning, Noreen. Ms. Miranda has 588 Courier Road, East Falmouth, listed as the address for her Thumbtastic pool business. Several of us would like to know how she can do that. We and many people in our association have frontage on Courier Road from the backs of our properties, but do not use a self-assigned Courier Road address. Please enlighten us. Is there a hearing on May 7th? I think there was an answer. I guess Noreen answered. She said, I'm unaware of what address the applicant may use outside of the zoning board of appeals matter. If there was a concern, that would be directed to Jonathan Dickinson at the enforcement department. And she did mention, in this case, that the ZBA hearing had been closed for testimony, so no further testimony would be allowed, and the vote by the board has been continued to May 5th to allow clarification from town council.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
So it may just be, you may want to note, depending on whatever the decision here is tonight, is that Mrs. Clattenburg was informed in advance that there would be no testimony tonight because the hearing was closed.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. McKenzie?
Mr. Chairman, I'll be very, very brief. The concern was whether or not you were sending a message out that if we withdrew this without prejudice, allowing us to come back under a proper bylaw, that would send a message that Sandy could reopen her business. There's a existing cease and desist order from both the Board of Health and the Building Department. So allowing us to withdraw this without prejudice and come in with proper representation and help her get her through this process causes no harm to anybody, because the cease and desist orders stay in effect. She cannot open that business. She can have friends over to swim in a pool, but she cannot operate the business. And that's really where we're at tonight.
At this point in time, might help us out if you're able to tell us what bylaw you anticipate filing under in the future, if you've already done that research.
We have, and I wish I could say that, but Attorney Penn Bianco is the one filing this, and I don't want to overstep him.
And he should be here.
He should be here, except he tested positive for COVID yesterday, and that's the reason he's not here tonight. I wish he could have been here.
Stevie's been here once.
I understand. Other than penalizing her by doing it with prejudice, where she'd have to come back, I see no harm in allowing it without prejudice, because she can't do anything with it until she comes back, and this board would be the ultimate arbiter.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Any questions from the board? All right. Should we close the hearing then, if we've...
Yeah, so motion to close?
We need to take public comment since we opened it.
Oh, that's right. Any public comment, any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this project tonight? Seeing none. Thank you for the reminder, Jerry. All right.
So motion to close?
Motion to close made by Bob. Is there a second? Second by Scott Peterson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing is closed. No more testimony may be taken. All right. Board discussion?
So I was the one originally that wasn't in favor of just the withdrawal. I haven't changed my opinion on that. I think because the building department and health have done a cease and desist, I think that's a good reason that we should either file a decision, which I would rather make a decision on the project, or do a withdrawal with prejudice. There were a lot of information with the building and health department that we got in the file. There at no time was any knowledge from the building department that this was to be used anything else than personal use. The applications were filed by Mrs. Miranda and also her husband. There was no updates at any time. We reopened tonight, and testimony was that the prior counsel, I guess, is representing her again. So we don't have any information on what they may apply under. That counsel, even though he couldn't appear here tonight if he's ill, could have always submitted something to the record. submitted something to the board, told him he had additional information, would ask us to reopen. There's been a big outcry from the neighborhood. There's been additional work on the property, thinking that the additional work could maybe allow us to give a permit, but as I, tried to state to Mrs. Miranda earlier, that our permits aren't based on the additional work, they're based on the bylaws that we're running under. It does not meet the percentages, it does not meet the parking. There were issues with the Courier Road entrance. Town wouldn't have been made aware of this unless Mashpee had called the town to say, where's the permits for the pool, because we're running a contract over there. So I would be more in favor of actually making a decision on the application, to deny the application under the current application, based on the conditions that it doesn't meet any of the bylaw determination for home occupation. It also does not meet anything for variance. We don't have any issue with the shape of the lot. There isn't a hardship based on that there is a single-family house there. Single-family houses are allowed. And there's no issues with grading or topography. So it doesn't meet that either. So that's where I would stand on my decision.
Thank you, Bob.
There's nothing to substantiate the opposition of Bob's points. Nothing. No lawyer submission, nothing.
So Scott, would you be in favor of withdrawing with prejudice? Or
I think there is no choice for that. You can't continue to allow time to be given to work out of this issue. And I went on the record last time about saying, I'll give you the time, and then the lawyer doesn't submit anything, and you can't speak to it. So that's where I'd be at with it. As unfortunate as it sounds, I mean, we still have a job to do.
James?
My biggest concern is that even if we can find a way to give a special permit for home use and occupation, this is a use variance, and that we're not authorized under our zoning bylaw to grant that. I have no doubt the applicant is a very, obviously skilled and passionate instructor and providing a service that's very much needed, an aqua center here in Falmouth, but that's not within our purview to grant a variance for use. So that's my feeling on this.
Thank you, James. Jerry, I realize you're not a voting member on this, but do you want to weigh in either way?
I would, if I could, I think the reasons for me would be to allow to withdraw without prejudice, because it gives them an opportunity to come back. And there is no harm done except our personal feelings. Nothing can be done. So we're just raising a red flag to say, because you didn't come in, and I know it's my opinion, come in front of us properly, we're not going to hold you to 2 years. And it might take them longer than 2 years to figure this out. I just think there's enough things in place to prevent them from opening. Whether or not they could get the variance or not, we never even got into that. I know what Bob's saying, but there may be other ways to skin the cat, but we never got into it. We're going on assumptions without facts one way or the other.
Thank you, Jerry. Scott?
I just want to echo everybody's comments that the board has made. It's very difficult to try and legitimize a request for something when we just don't have anything to really go on. So it's an unfortunate situation. So.
All right. And I am sympathetic to Ms. Miranda's situation. I believe during the last hearing I was of the opinion, or I thought there was a distinction to be made between allowing a withdrawal without prejudice before this board, with the understanding that a cease and desist order through the Board of Health and the Building Department were still in effect. Might be splitting hairs there, but that's the truth. Those C&D orders still stand. With the amount of public scrutiny, especially with the neighbors, I tend to believe that the cease and desist orders would stand in place and that Ms. Miranda would not violate. So based upon those reasons, I would be in favor of allowing without prejudice. But it seems that we have a majority of the board, so we can come to a decision.
I would just like to say that I know Jerry had made a comment about assumptions that, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not basing anything on an assumption. I'm just basing it on the bylaw that's printed, the information that was provided, and whether it actually complies or not.
How did you determine 30%? Traditionally, if it said that you was only going to use this 7 hours a week, that could come into play. We never discussed it.
So the bylaw itself bases the percentage of area of the property that you can use for home occupation?
But if it's 7 hours a
The
week,
area of the property, so it did exist, the actual section of the home as in square footage. So they base it on square footage, and that's where they base the 30%. Ms. Miranda at the time, and the testimony she gave, is she was estimating the 30% based on the actual size of the pool itself, not the entries, the surrounding area, the other areas that would need to be used. There was comments by building department, you'd have a bath, you had dressing rooms that were used in conjunction with the business. So all of those areas would have to be added in, and unfortunately, once you add anything in besides the amount of water that's in the pool, you are automatically over the 30% criteria. It's something that I would have thought her counsel would have pointed out originally. For some reason, he did not. I did bring it up in one of the other hearings when her counsel was here, my concern with the 30% ratio, and he said that he would be coming back the following meeting and explaining how they could meet that 30% based on the square footages. Unfortunately, at that point, he decided not to continue with the application, and then Mr. McKenzie was helping Ms. Miranda. So it's just based on what the home occupancy is. There's no parking allowed in the front yard. There's a whole list of them, and unfortunately, as you go through them, you know, you can kind of check them off. At the original meeting, even Ms. Miranda, just reading through whatever the page was, I was surprised on the application anyways, because you could literally just check off the marks and know. It would be almost impossible, you know, without, you know, redoing it in a smaller pool in a smaller space, which is a reconstruction project. It just didn't apply under the bylaw. That's a complete separate issue from what James has brought up, which is the use variance. The project just does not comply to a use variance. There's no way you could give a use variance for this. It doesn't meet any of the three items that we have to look at, so it's just not under.
And unfortunately, Jerry, those aren't assumptions.
well, let's put it this way, we never discussed it because the attorney didn't. It's a statement in the bylaw, and unfortunately, we never discussed if that could be passed or
Because
not.
the attorney showed up for
I agree.
for one meeting and couldn't answer those questions and
I-
didn't submit anything.
But he didn't submit anything, so we don't have information. I think it's a jump to assume that an individual opinion speaks for the entire board. It might speak for the entire board, but we didn't have a discussion or debate on other ways of passing it. That's all I'm saying. I agree with everything that Bob's saying, with the one exception is we've seen things when people go down, if they do the due diligence, and we'll say, did you think of this? Did you think of that? We did not get case law, which, and the other thing is, I'm not sure what, and I know it's attorney-client, we don't know what town council said. I mean, that will probably come out in the final ruling one way or the other, and I guess it could be appealed. So I understand.
You say we. You didn't read the opinion?
I don't think it was sent to me intentionally otherwise.
Oh.
So I mean, I've always been of the opinion that this is an open board, although it's a legal opinion. We do the public a disservice by not letting the public know what we know, since this is a judiciary board. They're going to have a right to it anyways, or we just prolong the opinion, the decision. And I know I'm a minority on that, but this is not a Supreme Court case or anything like that. We've always been open both ways. We want to tell people up front, we insist they come into us early, but we have a document that for some reason we could say we're going to release it in fairness to give the applicant a chance to rebuff whatever is said. And we could. But we chose not to.
All right, anyone else? All right, would anyone like to make a motion then?
I'll make the motion to not accept the withdrawal without prejudice, with prejudice. So my motion would be the withdrawal with prejudice.
All right, so motion was made with a withdrawal with prejudice, made by Scott. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I'll be opposed to that. So it will carry 4-1. Mr. McKenzie, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Gentlemen who are running, best of luck in your election.
Thank you.
All right, up next, we have application 16-21R, court-ordered remand, Noonan, 183 Surf Drive in Falmouth, requesting a special permit to raise and rebuild the non-conforming dwelling, increasing lot coverage by structures. Voting members on this project are myself, Scott Zelinski, Bob Dugan, James Morse, and Scott Peterson.
So just a reminder for the board, so we did continue this, so we'd have the contingent of the 5 members that were needed, and there was information submitted that we didn't go over at the last hearing that Mr. Clower can regarding the engineering.
Good. Anything else, Bob?
No, the only actual changes were submitted. There was nothing regarding architecturals. It's just based on the, I think, the footings of the foundation.
Very good. All right, and Attorney Clower, welcome back, and you have a full contingent of the board this time.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I am an attorney here in Falmouth, and I'm representing Joseph and Mary Noonan, the owners of 183 Surf Drive. Mr. Noonan is here with us this evening, as well as Matt Costa of Holmes McGrath Engineering. We've been over this a lot, so I don't want to belabor a lot of the points that we've covered a number of times. But I think it's worth just the 10,000-foot view. This property is located in a V-zone, velocity zone. There are proposed renovations in a situation in which almost any renovation is going to trigger the necessity of FEMA compliance. The building's assessed at $109,000, so the improvement threshold is $54,000. And as you know, construction costs are staggering. That might cover a kitchen, but probably not. So they have to raise and rebuild pursuant to the building code and FEMA regulations. At the last hearing, there was some concern expressed about what was seen as the invasive nature of the construction given the location. The applicant and the architect worked to find ways to address this. The original proposal involved dewatering and digging to 5 to 6 feet down for the foundation pilings. However, they've worked with Helical Drilling Incorporated. They've engaged them for this, and their plan would allow for pilings to be installed with minimal excavation. It would only require 3 feet of excavation, which is above the ground where they encountered groundwater at the piling locations, and would avoid the groundwater issues entirely. They'd be inserting helical piles at that point in order to provide the footings. We submitted materials on this matter, revised piling plan, the proposal from Helical Drilling, as well as a letter from Greg Sarunian, the architect, outlining the process and the plan. Our hope is that that information and that change is going to be helpful to the board in looking at what they saw at that point as an invasive portion of the process. I also think it's worth highlighting a few points about this project. This proposed home is not an outlier. It keeps with the neighborhood, both Surf Drive and Seagull Lane. The lot comparison we submitted reflects 9 houses nearby with larger footprints, 8 houses nearby with larger gross floor areas, all within that standard 300-foot radius. The applicants have made many changes over this process to address the board's concerns, as well as the concerns of the abutter. The setback to the abutter from the north has been increased from 16 feet to 23. The setback to the contour has been improved. The front yard setback has been eliminated as a non-conformity and improved from the original proposal. Mass of the structure has been reduced. The lot coverage by structure has been reduced. And now, again, we've changed the foundation plan in order to make that process less invasive. In addition, we provided the board with everything that they've requested along the way. Footprint comparisons, previously proposed and currently proposed dwellings, the ridge height comparisons, solar studies, overlays. The bylaw here really asks, does the proposal have adverse effects compared to its beneficial effects? If this is approved, it really achieves a fantastic end result. This is a substantial improvement to the property. We have compliance with the flood zone standards, elimination of existing nonconformities, improvements of existing nonconformities, substantial mitigation plantings. I think it's clear that the proposed revised residence is not substantially more detrimental and meets the standards of 1040, 10.2A, 1040, 11.3A4, and 240, 12.1E1. I'd be happy to address any questions that you might have, either myself or Mr. Costa, but I believe that the board can and should issue the special permit, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Attorney Clara. We'll turn it to board questions. Scott, anything?
I have no further questions, no.
Okay, Bob?
What does a, what kind of space does a rack, I don't even know, rack body, so a rack body in a tool truck? So on the Heliac proposal you sent over, it said they need to be assured that they can have a rack body in a tool truck on site along with a storage on site for all their equipment and materials. I'm not familiar with a rack truck, so I have a rack body, so I didn't even know what size that is. Is that a big?
Matt Costa's going to address that, but at this point, the house would have been removed.
No, I know, I just, for what they're doing with pilings, I mean, is it easy enough to get that on?
I think, for the record, Matt Costa, on behalf of Holmes McGrath, think of a F-250 size type of vehicle.
Okay, so that would be a rack body? And then a tool truck would be similar?
Yeah, there's plenty of room.
That's the only question I have.
All right. Scott, anything?
Matt, that front wall's gonna act as a buttress wall in between the seawall and the front part of that structure that faces the water? Because I had asked about the protection of the seawall, and if sheet piling was appropriate to protect.
No, it doesn't need any sheet piling. We're not deep enough to have any concerns about that at all. And actually, after Mr. Saronian changed this design, we're up above the groundwater, so we don't
You
even need
increase
to-
the footprint
Yeah, so.
of the footings, right?
Yeah, we're very confident
I understand.
that we're in good shape.
I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
James, anything?
No questions, thank you.
Jerry?
Question.
All right, my concerns were already addressed, so members of the public, are there any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this project?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Edward Kirk, attorney, law office and Main Street in Osterville. I'm representing Gloria Arcus, who's the abutter on Seagull Lane, just to the rear of the project. As Kevin said, we've been here quite a few times, and you've heard quite a bit of testimony and arguments being made, and I won't repeat all of them. I just would like to highlight one of the arguments that I think is very important about this situation, and that is that you keep in mind that this lot is not a lawful building lot. It was illegal from the day it was created, 1952. The zoning bylaw required there be 50 feet of frontage. This had 30 feet of frontage. It was received an approval, not required endorsement from the planning board, but an endorsement from the planning board laying out the lot does not cure the zoning violation. For that, a variance would be needed. So the structure that's on there, it's been there, it's protected because it's been there more than 10 years. But that protection applies to the structure, not to the lot. And when that building comes down, as Mr. Zielinski sort of zeroed in on the last time, in effect, you're left with a vacant lot, which is an illegal lot. And I submit that a special permit does not allow them to do what they want to do. A variance would be needed for that. And the question of frontage is not just a theoretical problem. This is a very unusual situation. Usually, even if you have a 30-foot frontage, you can come out of your driveway maybe and take a right. This is my left. You could take a left, or you can take a right and maneuver that way. The way these lots were set up, you come out of this property And if you try to go left, you're right at the property line of the abutter. And so we have questions of access and safety. It's not just a theoretical observation. It has an impact on the use of that property and vehicles entering and exiting from the lot. So as we've said before, I think this building will sort of serve to further the urban landscape which is taking place down there at the end of Surf Drive. And it will be detrimental to the neighborhood. Not the only detriment, but it's going to add to that aspect of the changes that have taken place. And it's an additional change and a substantial change. I don't know whether there's a lot of expertise on this board, practical, day-to-day expertise having to do with construction. I don't know whether any thought has been given to having the town engineer or someone else review the engineering plans, but leave that to the board. So once again, we're asking you that to deny the application, and thank you again for all your time.
Thank you, Attorney Kirk.
I got something.
Oh, did you have something for Attorney? Attorney Kirk? Sorry, there's a question from a board member.
Attorney Kirk, with respect to your reference to Mr. Zelinski zeroing in on the unbuildable lot, that's not exactly correct.
No,
I asked Attorney Clower what his opinion is on the protection after it was raised. That was the correct terminology.
You, with all due respect, you asked me if my position was that when that building comes down,
Right.
is the protection gone? Right. And my response
And
was yes.
your opinion was the protection was gone,
That's right.
and Mr. Clower's was
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Right.
Protection
And
was
I
in
was just
place.
saying.
I
that-
just wanted to clarify that for the
right.
record.
I was saying that you were focusing in on that,
Right.
on that subject.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, any other public comment? Seeing none? Attorney Clower?
Just a quick comment. I've raised this in response to this same point a number of times now. But in 1952, when the town changed the minimum lot size to 10,000 square feet, the revised bylaw stated all lots duly recorded prior to the date of approval by the Attorney General, which have an area of 7,500 square feet or more, may be used without the necessity of applying to the Board of Appeals. No minimum frontage requirement was set forth in that revision to the bylaw, and 183 Surf Drive was built in 1952. So I don't think it's a relevant point. I understand what Attorney Kirk is saying and trying to do, but I don't think it's relevant to the board's consideration.
Thank you, Attorney Clower. Any other follow-up questions from the board?
Does the construction at all at the abutting property affect access?
So I don't believe so.
Only because I went back and I didn't look at what that construction is, but it seemed it was hard enough to turn out of there originally, and now there's an expansion going on next door, so.
Well, they've torn down the house next door, and they're rebuilding. So if you look at the actual lot lines, it's deceiving when you're there because it looks as though the driveways start up on Seagull Lane, but the lot lines are much further down than you would think. They've been staked, of course, but there is plenty of room for them to access the site. And anything we're doing is going to be an improvement over the existing situation where the house is already closer to that access point, and there's no provided parking, there's no garage or anything.
But are you aware at all if the next door property is reconfiguring anything regarding their parking or stuff so that when you're coming out of here, you can't make that turn?
Well, they can't do anything outside of their property lines.
No, I understand that, but right now, when I back out, I have to back onto their property to get out, unless I want to back down Seagull Lane. So my question just was, whatever I don't know what their configuration is, but is that going to make it any more difficult than it is now?
Short answer is no.
Okay.
My other firm, Cape and Islands Engineering, is actually the engineer on that project, so I'm familiar with it, and there's no conflict between the two.
Okay.
Okay, anything else from the board?
Do you mind, Mr. Chair?
No, go right ahead.
Mind if I speak?
Please.
Thank you. Can you leave that up? Thanks. For the record, I'm Joseph Noonan. I am the homeowner and have been for the last 40 years. And I appreciate the letting me speak for a minute. There's been a lot of discussion around the access to the property that Mr. Dugan has made pretty clear. I've lived there for a long time, and there's never, ever been an issue with parking or access in and out of the driveway. We've had 8 people over visiting, and there has never been an issue. What we're proposing to do is really to open up the lot. There are no trees on the lot. It is 100% a clear lot with just bushes, privet hedges that outline the lot. The proposed building will actually open the lot, and it will allow for additional room to obviously pull in and pull out of the lot, just as it is in 185 Surf Drive. So as you can see, the lot is open, it's clear, it's been totally excavated, and there is significant room. It's a 1/4 of an acre lot. The original lot plan was 1 acre. It's subdivided into 4 building lots. And basically, there are 4 1/4 acre lots, 2 of which have been already built up. 1 is in the process of being built up, so we're the last one on the original acre lot to be built up. So we're literally, obviously, building up because we have to. We've now been in front of this board for the better part of 2 years. We've done, as Attorney Clower has said, we've done solar analysis, we've done shadow analysis. We've been through conservation twice at great cost. We've modified the house 3 times. We now modified the foundation to satisfy the environmental impact of the waterway. We, as residents, put the riprap in at a cost of $12,000 in 1978, okay? The challenger, Mrs. Arcus, chose not to do that. Her property, which abuts ours, was not protected. She did not try to protect the waterway. We did that at our expense. That wasn't the town's expense, we did that. So we have no intentions of impacting the waterway. We've enjoyed the waterway as long as we've lived there. So, we really would appreciate bringing this to a closure, and we would really appreciate your support on this project. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Noonan. Any questions from the board for Mr. Noonan?
No, just for Mr. Clower, and I'm sure it's in here, Mr. Noonan mentioned it, so did we do a shadow? We didn't do a shadow.
There was a shadow
didn't
study done
require one,
in the initial application. There was a shadow study done.
Okay.
Okay. Is the board satisfied with everything that we've received?
Mr. Chair, I think pursuant to the remand order, if you close it for discussion, I think we have to have a chance to withdraw prior to a vote.
It's been a while since I'll admit, it's been a while since I looked at the remand order, but I think you're correct, Attorney Clower. All right. So how would the board like to proceed? Would you like to
We'll discuss it.
just discuss it in open?
Yeah.
Okay.
I might as well. I mean,
All right. Would anyone like to lead us off?
well, since I guess I'm the problem vote.
Well, I think,
My
I'm
issue.
not going to name anyone, but I
No.
think there were 2 members last time who
My
were...
issue has always just been on the size of the house. I know from the original plans, they did a 6-inch reduction. My personal opinion, it was just too large. And it's a personal opinion, everyone does their own. I've had issues backing in and out of the property without going on the property next door. Maybe I'm on something and I don't realize I'm on it, but I've just had trouble doing it, getting in and out with mine, and I've got a smaller, mid-sized SUV. I would have liked, if they would have considered making it similar to the one that was in front of it size-wise, that was the main one, whatever the first one is on the street, which I think was one of the first ones that, on the main road on...
181 Surf Drive?
Yeah, I think it's the first one that ever went up, and that's probably I think when they had the deeds and stuff, that might have been the lot that broke up originally. The revisions that came through were basically showing the engineering for the pylons in the structure, and the applicant has every right to do, whatever they want. So my position just hasn't changed because the main issue that I have wasn't revised at all, so that's where I stand.
Mr. Chairman, Mayor?
Go ahead, Scott.
I feel like my concerns were answered with respect to the waterway. Through testimony, we've heard that there's been no parking issues. We've had no abutter opposition this time about that. So at some point, you have to take the applicant's word for it. That would become a civil case, I would imagine, if it became a problem. The house has been reduced. I understand that the concept of shrinking it and the way it's positioned on the lot allows for parking in the lot. So for that reason, I would be in support of the project, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Scott. James, how do you feel?
My position hasn't changed. I'm still in support. I certainly am empathetic to the neighbor, the concerns raised by Attorney Kirk, but I think that there've been FEMA compliance is a compelling reason. That the neighborhood, I think, essentially along Surf Drive has tipped. I know that the definition of what the neighborhood is, but having ridden a bike from the Heights down to Woods Hole every day from the 80s on, it's just the nature of things. Things have changed, things have had to go up for a variety of reasons. So I still am in favor.
Thank you, James. Scott, how do you feel?
I too am in favor, kind of echoing James's overview. It's not 1952. I mean, I'm a native of Falmouth. I wish some of the things would stay the same, but unfortunately, the structure of the way the world's turning is that's what's going to happen in that area, partially because of velocity zones and things like that. So yes, I'm in favor of supporting the applicant.
Thank you, Scott. And for the reasons that I stated on the record last meeting, I'm still in favor of this project. I touched upon how neighborhood is not defined in our bylaws. It should stay that way. I understand that each and every member on this board may have a different idea in their head of what a neighborhood might be, but for me, I take into consider a lot of things, homes in the immediate area, what street it's on, especially in areas such as this. Take into consideration the FEMA regs and how that affects buildings going up. Do recognize the fact that this board has, I wouldn't quite say struggled, but we've had some contentious arguments over the past few years about houses going up, and it seems to be their bulk is increasing, but we do deal with that on a case-by-case basis, and it should stay that way. So for those reasons, I'm still in favor of this project. So by my count, I think we were about 3-2 last hearing, and Scott, I think
I didn't vote on the last one, remember?
well, we were having a conversation, and I think you were either on the fence or in opposition, pending the
They
results.
certainly answered the environmental question that was my biggest problem. And through the fact that nobody opposed the parking issue, I have to give the applicant the benefit of the doubt with respect to that. And as Mr. Morse so succinctly described.
Right. And not to completely put you on the spot, but since it sounds like you're in the camp of voting yes, so that tips.
That's what I said.
That tips the scales 4-1 as opposed to 3-2, which is, I'm sure, what Attorney Clara was trying to get us to get to. All right. Would anyone like to make a motion then if we're all set with discussion?
I think, would the applicant want to withdraw at this point?
No, I would not.
Pursuant to the Remand.
For the record, are you?
I appreciate the concern and the thoughtfulness, and you're asking. I would very much like to proceed with all due haste.
Very good.
Move to close then.
With a 4-1 vote.
Attorney Morse, thank you for assuring we're complying with the court-ordered remand. All right, was there a motion?
I'll move to close.
I'll second Mr. Morse's motion to close.
Motion made by James, second by Scott Zelinski. All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Hearing is closed. No more testimony may be taken. As for the board's decision,
Okay, motion to approve with conditions.
All right.
I'll second Mr. Morse's motion to approve with conditions.
It's a good start.
Motion to approve with conditions made by
It's a
James,
good
seconded by
start.
Scott.
No, I'm against. So it's
So it's a 4-1.
but I'll help them with the,
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr.
Robert,
Dugan.
since you have the
Help them
file
with
in
You've
front
got
of
the file
you.
in front of you.
Yeah.
In the spirit of teamwork, thank you. All right. Well, first, is this under the new
Well-
bylaw or the old?
No, it's under the old.
It's under the old.
Yes.
so even though it's remand, the remand doesn't go to the new?
Yes, so
Okay.
even though Kevin was very
What
nice
makes it
to
easier?
provide you with all the new bylaw references, because we've continued, I think we're fine to maintain that.
So then you would want to find 243C, 69E, and 24216, not substantially more detrimental.
We sure do.
I would assume you'd want to put in there that the rebuild is due to a FEMA statute to be in compliant with the flood zone,
Concom has issued orders of conditions.
non-common water conditions. You go on from there while I look up the referrals.
There's been adjustment made to the footprint of the foundation to accommodate concerns about environmental detriments to the waterway.
I think it's
As a finding.
important to just put the procedural posture of how we got here today.
Of course. And regarding those setbacks under 243C, I think it was, they were under going to the street and then to the contour. I think it was the 3-foot contour, if I had that correctly.
Right.
Dwelling height was reduced.
It's 4 bedrooms, correct?
4 beds on sewer allowed by right.
So put that 4 bedrooms will be allowed under the flow neutral bylaw, so no flow neutral bylaw will be triggered.
Did Concom issue something on this? They must have.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
considered order.
Yeah.
Applicant will be applying to the wastewater division for a sewer connection, modification permit.
I think it's important to note that there was no abutter opposition with respect to the parking, the direct abutter.
Put as a finding that wastewater division will, we'll put in the conditions too, will need to witness the cut and cap of the sewer line before demolishing the house to prevent demolition from debris entering the sewer system. No stormwater runoff public property, but it's public rights of way. There's a leaching trench proposed for the roof area. Address must be changed to a Seagull Lane address.
Do you need language in there that they upgraded that to an auger system for the foundation, for the footings?
You can put as a finding.
Per plan.
Per new plan, right?
Good note.
Revised, per revised plan, foundation plan.
Lot coverage is being increased. Anything else for findings?
You had multiple letters of support from other abutters.
Yeah, I mean, do we usually list those in the finding? There's letters of support in the butters, and then there was a opposition
One
from...
opposition.
I would list them all.
Yeah, you would, I mean,
They wrote.
the abundance of fairness, I mean, if,
No, I don't have a problem listing them, I just didn't know if we usually list them.
You don't have to read them now.
no,
No, no, we're not reading anymore.
thumbs up.
My voice will think tonight. And you have all the dimensional issues, right, Noreen, all the...
Should we move on
I'm sure
to,
water
so-
wants the meter inside, you probably have.
Well, we'll add those to the conditions, but on
Yeah.
conservation, they'll be in charge of soil erosion and sediment
Sediment
control
control,
standards, right?
On the order of
So-
conditions.
Yeah, so put that in a finding, and then we'll also put that in as a condition. On the conditions, put that the ZBA plans must match the Concom plans. They must comply with subsection 99(1), and fixing of legible numbers required time limit for compliance, and that will be with the Seagull Lane address. They will handle that with the town for the actual address. Put as a condition that they must contact Charlie Pyers of the wastewater division before demolishing the house. Wastewater division will need to witness the cut and cap of the sewer line to prevent demolition debris from entering the sewer. They must also apply the wastewater division for a sewer connection modification permit before beginning any work. We have the soil erosion with Concom, right? This, the applicant should cover the
What did you have for a final height there?
34.5.
Yeah, do you have it just
It's
offhand?
34.5.
34.5.
So do you want height cert, the frame?
Yeah, do a height certain frame.
And the lot's pretty flat, so mean grade is,
Also put in that it's in a VE zone in the finding. Submit a copy of the plan submitted to the ZBA. So I think as part of the Concom commit, they have to, you know, some of these are old. So the original Concom says that the applicant needs to submit a copy of the plan submitted to the ZBA with a final revision date, and it gives a revision date. I don't know if that's changed. I assume it's changed. When was the last revision, do you know? Was it in 21 or?
It was
the
21.
Concom?
21. Yeah, we went to Concom in 21 with the revised plans.
So that was in February, so is that the same plan? or
Yes,
was there
that's the plans that we submitted. Those are the building plans that were submitted to the board last spring.
And there were no changes to that, correct?
No.
All right, so then those same plans just to be with Concom.
Work hours?
Yeah, work hours, all construction vehicles and materials to be kept on site.
They'll probably
may wanna-
have to use a pump truck for that anyway.
You may want to put in the findings from the statement Mr. Cloud made about when the lot was divided, et cetera, in the 50s, and what bylaw they would have complied under. So I don't have anything here directly from the water department, so we'll just throw in the thing about it has to, the meter has to be in the property.
Meter inside.
As a
Has to
condition.
comply to all Falmouth Department water standards. I just don't see any,
And probably water service size.
yeah, so just
Yeah,
put in that
based
the new construction must be based on all current standards for the Falmouth Water Department. Be signed off by them, Kahal. I think that's it, unless you can think of anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just about does it. Anyone else? Okay. So that was a motion to approve made by James, second by Scott Zelinski,
Assist from Bob Dugan.
with an assist from Bob Dugan to approve with conditions. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
One, me.
Okay, so
Nay.
that passes 4-1. Attorney Clower, thank you.
Thank you all very much for your time. Mr. Chair, if I may make a quick suggestion slash request. I'm representing the applicants for 21-22 and 24-22. The Elcott Road application sandwiched between those two. After 2 years, I'd really welcome a chance to talk to my client right now. So if the board would be inclined to take Elcott out of order, I can then follow up with the remaining two.
Makes sense.
Makes sense to us?
So then I will make a motion to take 23-22 prior, Trustee 83 Elcott Road, out of order as the first new hearing.
And again, thank you.
I'll second that as proposed.
All right, so motion to take number 23-22 prior, Trustee 83 Elcott Road, out of order. Motion was made by Bob, second by Scott Zelinski. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. so
Good luck.
My name is Richard Pryor. I
Oh,
live at
sorry,
80
just a minute.
We have to read a whole bunch of stuff.
We'll need to read everything into the record.
My first time.
Just a
I'm
minute.
glad you're very excited.
You're all keyed up, that's good.
That's good.
So we do have application number 23-22 prior, Trustee 83 Elcott Road in East Falmouth, requesting a special permit to construct a second-floor addition, convert existing one-car garage into two-car, expand existing front porch, and rebuild rear deck, exceeding 20% lot coverage by structures.
So application 23-22, Richard F. Pryor, Trustee, 83 Alcott Road, East Falmouth, Mass., applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to sections 24011.3A. It says 4, but it isn't 4, it's A. Formerly 24069E of the Code of Falmouth to construct a second-floor addition, convert existing one-car garage into two-car, expand existing front porch and rebuild rear deck, exceeding 20% lot coverage by structures on subject property known as 83 Alcott Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For referrals, the revised plans do include erosion controls to protect the abutting properties as they recommended in the referral. This is a revision, so I'll let you know what the referral was. Also, a revision revised from Water Department saying that they did approve of the new plan and it met their requirements. So from engineering, this application was reviewed for impacts to public rights-of-way and public utilities. Alcott Road is a private right-of-way in this area. Any connections or alterations to public utilities would require permission from the appropriate town department. The project was not direct any stormwater runoff to public property or butters or public right-of-way. Dry wells are proposed for the roof, and then that was dry wells were proposed for the roof as recommended. And then there was a comment regarding soil erosion sediment controls, but that's the one that they updated to say that those erosion controls are now included in the revised plans. You would still have, though, the soil erosion and sediment control standard conditions document found on the engineering webpage would reference any references to Department of Public Works and Engineering Division shall be replaced with the Zoning Board of Appeals, who would be the permitting authority for the project. Fire Department has no issues with the project as drawn. Health has no issues with this proposal. The proposal keeps the home at 3 bedrooms, so there's no increase in flow being proposed. Planning, no comment. Assessors, no comment. And the two comments on the original water, one was the water service must be in the plans, and the other is the existing service of 3/4 be upgraded to 1 inch. Both of those are now on the revised plans. Water Department did attach a card regarding where the water line is, so they know. And then this evening, there were 2 letters submitted. One is from a Don Kempton and Lori Manning. They're at 476 Shorewood Drive. We are writing to you to attest to the exemplary character of Dick Pryor. Since becoming his neighbor, he has shown to be kind, generous, and always willing to help neighbors in need. He has recently discussed the need to add more space to his current home to make it more functional, and he has our complete support. If you have any questions or would like to discuss it, please contact us. They get their telephone number. And then this letter comes from a Lauren Mullen at 87 Elcott Road. Emailing to let you know that Mark and I, which are in support of the upcoming home project. We've seen the plans, feel that the house will be a nice fit for the neighborhood, and have no concerns. And then thank for meeting the applicant to let them know if he needed anything further. And that's it.
All
And
right.
there is there's a bulk calculation that was submitted.
There's a what? I didn't quite hear that.
Oh, it's for the coverages. It's a lot comparison document submitted. So that would be it.
That's it? All right. So I'll be appointing Jerry as a voting member. That way you have full contingent of the board, 5 voting members. So, Mr. Pryor, go right ahead.
Well, you seem to have stolen most of my thunder here. I don't know what else
You can
I
repeat
We
anything
haven't
you
done
like.
that yet.
So as you can see, the scope of the project's not all that great. I'm going up, adding 700 feet to the top floor and about 49 square feet to the bottom floor. The size of the driveway is going to stay the same. It's already double wide, and that's going to, the second part of the garage that we're adding is going to come out to the edge of what the driveway is right now, so that's not changing at all. And I really don't have anything else to add, except that I appreciate your time, and I wanted to thank two ladies over here for helping me out.
Pretty good, aren't they?
Great.
All right, so we'll see if the board has any questions, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Jerry, anything?
No questions at this time.
All right, James?
What will the ridge height be?
I'm sorry?
What will the ridge height be with the addition?
It's going to be, I think, 24 feet. Let me just tell you here in a second. 24 feet. It's going from 16.6 to 24.
Thank you.
Okay, Scott?
It's probably the deck's on sonotubes,
It's on what?
sonotubes, poured sonotubes.
You know, it's hard to tell because the way it's built, I assume it is, but the way it's built, it's got an apron around it, and I can't really see under there.
Okay.
I never really tried to figure that out.
Right. Just
But
curious.
one of the builders that looked at it said you could probably use the same footings, so I assume that's
I know,
what's
that's,
under there.
well, I just, you have old-style cesspools in there, I was just curious.
Yeah.
And then one out front. Yeah, no further question, it was just out of curiosity, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Bob?
I have no questions.
Scott?
No questions?
All right. Guess no questions from me. It's a pretty straightforward project. Anyone out there who has any question, comments, or concerns? Any members of the public? All right, seeing none, back to the board.
Motion to close?
I'll second Mr. Dugan's motion to close.
Motion closed made by Bob, second by Scott Zelinski. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Hearing is closed. No more testimony may be taken. And how would the board like to proceed?
Motion to approve with conditions?
I'll second Mr. Dugan's motion to approve with conditions.
All right, so the motion was made, Bob, second by Scott, to approve with conditions. Findings?
So it's 240.11.3, it's A, I don't think it's it says 4, but I don't think it's a 4. And then the other one, the old 242.16, which is 11.1E, I think. I always forget that one. Yeah, 240, 12.1E. 12.1E. They're adding constructing a second floor addition. They're converting a one-car garage into a two-car. They're expanding the front porch and rebuilding the rear deck. The lot coverage change is
Lot coverage by structure is 19.26, going up to 22.48.
so 22.48, which is under the 25% allowed with special permit.
The downspout drainage already, proposed.
Yeah, I'll put there was a lot coverage table submitted. There were revisions already made on the plans to meet the Falmouth Water Department standards, and the erosion controls were actually also placed on the plans.
Sideline setbacks go from 20.4 to 10.4.
Yeah, which was still in excess of the 10 required.
Right.
Oh, put that there were 2 letters of support included. And neighbors that are in support of the remodeling to make it more usable.
Yep.
I think that's it.
All right.
You can put the structures going from, if you just want to put square footage in, just say going from 2,215 to 2,585.
The rest of it's pretty clean.
Yeah, then for conditions, work hours, the soil erosion sediment controls that list the zoning board in place of the engineering department. Didn't see anything from,
Did you put in, there was lot coverage calculation
yeah, we added that into the.
already? Sorry, I missed it.
I also put into the finding that the property is a three-bedroom and it's staying as a three-bedroom. So health is not involved because it requires current flow, but there isn't a upgrade plan for the septic. And also put in there, there's a water upgrade to the service going from a 3/4 to a 1-inch.
There is a proposed rinse station too, Bob. I don't know
Oh,
if
yeah,
you want
put
to
that in
add
there.
that. You want to put that language in there.
Also put that it's within for finding it's in a coastal pond overlay district.
May I ask a question? No, at this point I can't.
Sorry, we're closed. See, we didn't steal all your thunder yet.
You don't want to run the risk of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
And we have, we did work hours and,
Yep, we got those.
work hours, all work materials and to be kept on site.
Anything else?
That's all I got.
All right.
If
So
you
that
could just
was-
find me a builder, I'd appreciate it.
Get in line.
All right, so that was a motion to approve with conditions made by Bob, second by Scott Zelinski. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Good luck, sir.
Best of luck, Mr. Pryor.
Thank you. Thanks for your service, everyone. I never realized how much it was to it till I got involved with this. Thanks again.
It's a lot of work to be happy, right?
All right, so we took that one out of order, so we're coming back up to the top now. We have application number 21-22, Kravitz, 97 Lakeshore Drive in East Falmouth, requesting a special permit to construct an addition, covered deck, and extend the existing covered porch.
So application 21-22, Robert M. and Nancy J. Kravitz, 1164 Central Avenue, Needham, Mass. Have applied to the zoning board of appeals for a special permit pursuant to sections 240, 10.2A. Is it 4? It's A4, we'll check it. Of the Code of Falmouth to construct an addition, covered deck, and extend the existing covered porch on subject property known as 97 Lakeshore Drive, East Falmouth, Mass.
It's not 4, that was, I don't think there was a 4 there. That was,
I just want to double check when we do it up, because they,
I'm still trying to figure this damn
for
thing
some
out.
reason, 4 just appears all the time in applications at 4. Yeah, did they? Okay. So for engineering, application was reviewed for impacts to public rights of way and public utilities. Lakeshore Drive is a public right of way in this area. No alterations are proposed to the right of way. Any changes within the right of way would require filing a permit with the engineering division. Any connections or alterations to public utilities would require permission from the appropriate town department. The project must not direct any stormwater runoff to public property or butters or public rights of way. Dry wells are included in the project as recommended. Also recommend condition be added of subsection 99(1), a fixing of legible numbers required and time limit for compliance. Upon completion of construction, the applicant shall post the address for this residence per that subsection. Also note the site slopes down from the town right-of-way, so no erosion controls are required to protect the public roadway. From Health has no issues with the project. The current and proposed drawings show 4 bedrooms. We do not consider the lower level walkout to be a bedroom, as it does not meet the definition of a bedroom in Title V, as it lacks a window. Assessors, no comment. Fire department, no issues with the project is drawn. Planning, no comment. The water department, the water main and service are on the plans as required. The existing home is served by town water. The new addition appears close to where the existing water service is. Please note that no structure may be built over the water service, and the service may need to be moved, renewed if there is a conflict. That's it.
All right, and for this one, I'll be appointing Scott Peterson as a voting member, so we have all 5. And Attorney Clower.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, Kevin Clower, and I am representing Bob and Nancy Kravitz, the owners of 97 Lakeshore Drive. They are here tonight seeking to renovate and modify the existing non-conforming dwelling on the site. The property 97 Lakeshore Drive is located on the shores of Jenkins Pond. The lot is 13,626 square feet, and it's in the RC zoning district. What exists today is a 2.5-story, 4-bedroom dwelling and shed. The total footprint on that is 1,871 square feet, which is 13.7% lot coverage by structure. It's non-conforming side yard setback to the west, being 8.9 feet where 10 is required, and the side yard setback to the east, to the shed, being a little under a foot where 10 feet is required. Actually, it's 3 feet, I think that's required there. Otherwise complies with front yard and rear yard setbacks, as well as lot coverage requirements. The existing ridge height on this property is 30 feet 6 inches.
Say that again, please.
30 feet 6 inches. They're proposing a modest addition, mostly in the front of the dwelling, facing the street. It increases the first floor living space and adds a small covered porch over the entrance area, and also an extension of the existing covered porch on the western side of the dwelling. This proposal does not affect any of the existing nonconformities and doesn't create any new nonconformities. The ridge height of the addition is 16 feet 9.5 inches, so it's significantly lower than what exists at 30 feet. Due to the existing nonconformities, this does require a special permit under 240-10.2A, previously 3C, which states that pre-existing nonconforming structures may be changed by special permit, provided there's a finding by this board that the proposed alteration is not substantially more detrimental than what exists. You're asked to consider the standards of 240-12.1E and whether or not the alteration creates any new dimensional nonconformities, impairs views and vistas, and reasonably conforms to the neighborhood. Here, we have no new nonconformity created. The existing nonconforming setbacks are unaffected. We'll continue to comply with front yard and rear yard setbacks, as well as lot coverage requirements. Even with an increase in the footprint, the lot coverage is only going to be 15.6%, well below the 20% that's allowed by right. There's no impact of views and vistas from the public ways. The structure, as designed, will remain consistent with the surrounding properties in size and in scope. I'm not aware of any adverse effects to this proposal, and certainly none that would overbalance the benefits. And again, I believe it meets the requirements of 240-10.2A and 240-12.1E. Based on this information, I would ask that the board grant the special permit, but I would be happy to address any questions that you might have at this time.
All right, thank you, Attorney Clower. Board questions? Scott, anything?
When I drove by today, I thought it seems to be a very reasonable ask on the applicant's part. The house sits well off the road and 70 feet off the road. There's some sort of a walkway or something to the east, so I see no issues with it.
All right, thank you. Bob, anything?
Yeah, Kevin, could you just identify where the actual 4 bedrooms are? Is the attic the fourth
The den
bedroom?
on the top story.
Third floor space is the
Yes.
4th?
Yep.
That's the only question I have, third floor.
All right, Scott?
I agree with Mr. Peterson's assessment. I think it's appropriate.
Okay, James?
No questions and no concerns.
Nothing to add.
So I have nothing to add as well. Actually, Attorney Clower, shed's going to remain in place?
It is.
All right. Does it for me. Public comment, any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this project? Seeing none, back to the board.
Motion to close?
Second.
Motion closed made by Bob, second by James. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing is closed. No more testimony may be taken.
Motion to approve with conditions?
Second.
This is with conditions made by Bob, second by James. On to findings.
So 240 10.2A and 240 12.1E, not substantially more detrimental, and they're increasing utilization. Non-conformities are the side yard westerly setback, which is at 8.9, where 10 is required, and the side yard easterly, which is at 0.8, where 10 is required. Ridge height is at 30 feet 6 inches. There's a front addition, and they're doing an extension also to the covered porch. There's no new dimensional nonconformities. Our current property has 4 bedrooms. The current property has 4 bedrooms, and the proposed also has 4. 3 bedrooms on the second floor and 1 bedroom on the third floor. It has a walkout lower level, but no bedrooms are in the walkout lower. Property's in a water resource district. Lot coverage, it's going from 13.7 to 15.6, under the 20% allowed by the special permit, and the structures, parking, and paving is increasing from 16.1 to 17.9, which again is under the 40% allowed by special permit. No erosion and sediment control standards are being requested due to the location of the property with the public road. The applicant will need to comply with posting an address on the home. Dry wells are included in the project. And the reason, again, no sediment erosion is because the site slopes down from the public right-of-way. Also put it for the health referral. The health referral is basing it on the 4 bedrooms remaining 4, with the 3 bedrooms on the second floor and 1 bedroom considered on the third floor. No bedrooms in the basement, the walkout basement. Also put the water main and service are on the plans per Falmouth Water Department standards. Also put a finding that the addition appears close to where the existing water service is located, and structures may not be built over the water service. Service may need to be moved, renewed if there is a conflict. I think I'm good with that.
All right. Anything else from anyone? All right.
So conditions per plans. Property is a 4-bedroom to remain a 4, with no sleeping area in the walkout lower level. Project upon completion of construction, the applicant shall post the address for the residents per subsection 991. Fixed legible numbers required and time limit for compliance. Also put on there that no structure may be built over the water service line. The service may need to be moved or renewed if there is a conflict with the new addition that appears close to where the existing water service is located. Work hours, all materials to be kept on site. That's it.
All right. So that was a motion to approve with conditions made by Bob and second by James. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gancit.
All right. So on to 24-22, Lorian LLC, 108 Gancit Road in Woods Hole, requesting a modification of special permits 75-18 and 21-21 to allow modifications to previously approved plans.
So application 24-22, Lorian LLC, 108 Gancit Road, Woods Hole, Mass. has applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for modification of special permit 75-18 and 21-22 pursuant to sections 240, 10.1C5 and 240, 11.4A1 and the Code of Falmouth to allow modifications to the previously approved plans. Subject property is 108 Gancit Road, Woods Hole, Mass. So we have in the referrals, the original attached amended order of conditions from April 26, 2021. From engineering. From engineering, no comment. From water department, please note that the Falmouth DPW Water Division witnessed the fire flow test at 108 Gancit Road, and the available flow and pressure for fire suppression purposes may be an issue for any new construction or any expansions in this area. And this must be taken into consideration when planning for fire services or private hydrants. Health has no issues with the project changes. The updated plan needs to be submitted to the health department so the septic system installation permit on file can be updated. Fire department has no issues with the project as drawn. And planning has no comment.
All right, and for this project, I'll be appointing Sherry as the voting member and Attorney Clower.
Good evening again. For the record, Kevin Clower. I am here at this point representing Lorian LLC, the owners of 108 Gancit Road, and they are seeking modification of special permit number 21-21, which was in and of itself a modification of decision 75-18. As most of you will recall, this was before the board last year, and we're here tonight to request a minor change to the plans. As a brief recap, the subject property, 108 Gancit Road, is located in the northern edge of Woods Hole. It's 3.64 acres with substantial frontage along Buzzards Bay, and it is in the residential AA zoning district. The original permit, the 75-18 permit, allowed for a 9-bedroom main house, 21,700 square feet, a 5-bedroom, 4,500 square foot guest house with a 3-car garage, a 2,000 square foot pool house, and 2 swimming pools. We modified that decision last year. The main house was reduced from 9 down to 7. The guest house was reduced from 5 down to 3. And instead of a pool house, they added a conservatory. The approved lot coverage by structure was going to be 9.7%, which is a decrease of about 9,000 square feet. And the lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking is at 21.1%. Again, that was a decrease from the original of almost 10,000 square feet. The applicant is seeking some minor alterations to the plans, some of which of this was approved administratively, but I just kind of lumped it all together in this application just to be safe. The generator location on the southeastern side of the guest house has been slightly modified. Within the guest house, they're proposing an additional bedroom and bathroom in the basement. This does not change the footprint of the building in any way, and it was originally approved at 5 and then reduced to 3. They're looking to make it 4 at this point. There was an alteration to the shape and location of the window well on the southern side of the guest house. The septic system B was modified to accommodate the additional bedroom in the guest house. And a very minor change to the conservatory. I will zoom in on this. They have added an additional cold frame, which is this area right here at the southeastern corner of the conservatory. There was an existing one, or originally approved one on the southwestern side. Now they're looking for a matching one on the southeastern side. There's no change to lot coverage by structure or lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking. They remain at 9.7 and 21.1% respectively. Whereas this is a modification of the existing special permit, which was issued pursuant to 240-3A, which is now 240-10.2A. The criteria for consideration are those standards that were 240-216 and are now 240-12.1E. Essentially, does this proposal have adverse effects that overbalance the beneficial effects on the neighborhood or the town in view of the particular characteristics of the site? I believe these changes are minor and modest in nature. I don't believe there's any detriment to this proposal. Certainly nothing adverse or detrimental that would overbalance the benefit to the applicants, and I believe it more than meets the standards of 240-12.1E. I believe the board can and should grant this modification, and I'd be happy to address any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Attorney Clara. Board questions? Jerry, anything?
Nothing. Thank you.
James?
No questions, thank you.
Scott?
None for me.
Bob?
Just for confirmation, so we're going on to 10.1C5, 11.4A1, 12.1E, but there was another one I thought you mentioned.
I don't know.
Was that just a...
Lumped them all together, remember?
So I'm going to go by these. and if you
Yeah,
need one later, you'll have
what
to
you
let-
said.
Administratively, because I'm getting confused.
Right.
No, do you think they'll be coming back again for any more modifications? Just that
Probably.
I just
mean,
remember this project from the beginning when it's one of those projects you just want to see.
I know. I mean, I suspect that as they continue the construction, there's going to be tweaks. You know, I've expressed to them that all these tweaks take time and money and effort. But, you know, when you're building out a property like this, I think you might as well make it exactly what you want.
Oh, it's beautiful.
You know, the landscaping area looks like we could hunt people.
And all things being relative, they are minor.
Yeah,
Oh, they're very minor, yeah.
yeah.
Although I do miss what that original one had a, which I never saw before. You went into the ground in the middle. It looked like a gazebo.
It was the
but
pool
actually
house.
built-
That was the pool house.
It was built almost like a tube into the ground, and then you
Yeah.
walked out onto the grotto, which now is a garden, but,
Yeah.
Cool.
yeah. No, I had no other questions. I just want to make sure we get the.
Sure. Scott?
Just one, how many bedrooms altogether on this site?
There will be 11,
Okay, thank you.
which is down from the 15 that was originally approved.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Serviced by separate.
Separate septics,
Acceptance.
A and B.
All right, no questions from me, so members of the public, any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this project? Seeing none, back to the board.
Motion to close, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion closed made by Scott and Scott Zelinski, second by James. All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Hearing is closed. No more testimony may be taken.
So motion to approve with conditions.
I'll second them.
Approve the conditions made by Bob and second by Scott.
So Noreen, when we approve the modification, because it's 7518 and 2121, does the new one replace those or just get added to it?
So.
I mean,
now
do we have
that-
to, include everything from before, or we just
I
include
don't
the
think
changes in
so.
the
I think you
modification?
can just refer to the modifications under the new bylaw.
Okay. All right, so we got 240 10.1C5, 240 11.4A1, and 240 12.1E. I don't want to list them all out, but you put the list of all the changes. They're all pretty minor in nature. You can just add them all in. There's nothing that,
I itemized them in the
Instrumental.
cover letter.
and then as far as the, only condition I guess we have to add is that the, actually, I guess for a finding, and then I don't know how you handle this in conditions or not, so we'll have to make a finding, the note about the Falmouth DPW Water Division witnessed the fire flow test at 108 Gancit. And the available flow and pressure for fire suppression purposes may be an issue for any new construction or expansions in the area. It should be taken into consideration when planning fire services or private hydrants. I don't think it has to be a condition, but we should just list it as a,
It's part of the submittal, though, isn't it?
I mean, I guess on a, what could you use as a condition that the applicant takes into consideration that situation? Because they're not requiring anything and it's
No, I
private,
think
so.
they're just providing notice because of the age of the,
So maybe under condition, just put the applicant should take into consideration, it's not enforcement, should take into consideration planning for fire services, the same issue. I mean, anything we don't change stays from the original plan, right? So we've got all the other, work hours and everything in the original, so that would just carry over. Put in there that the updated plan needs to be submitted to the health department, so the septic system installation permit on file can be updated, put that as a condition. Yeah, I think that's about it.
All right, so that just about does it.
Yeah, because everything else will just come from the other two.
Yep.
They're all minor improvements.
All right, so that was a motion to approve with conditions made by Bob, second by Scott. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you, Attorney Clower.
We take a brief break.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah,
All right,
just a 5.
we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. All right, so we are back. Up next, we have application 50-20M, Village at Brook Kiln LLC, 511 Brook Kiln Road in West Falmouth, requesting a modification of comprehensive permit 50-20 to allow modifications to previously approved plans.
So, Noreen, we extended this, so did we open it yet? Do I need to open it? We already did an extension.
Right, so yes, you do.
So application number 50-20M, Village at Brook Kiln LLC, 1094 Blue Hill Avenue, Milton, Mass. Is applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a modification of comprehensive, that should be permit number 50-20, pursuant to Chapter 40B to allow modifications to previously improved plans on subject property known as 511 Brook Kiln Road, West Falmouth, Mass. Referrals, Water Department. DPW Water Division requires that all new main installed in Brook Kiln Road must be 12-inch diameter as per town-approved capital efficiency plan. Any new mains that tie into Brook Kiln Road must be 8-inch diameter as per town-approved water standards. These rules shall apply. These rules shall be enforced by the Falmouth DPW Water Division, Mass PWS ID number 4096000, regardless of the nature of the petition to expand the town water distribution system. From engineering, condition 35 includes the sentence, "The sidewalk shall be separated from the road by either a grass strip or vertical curb for pedestrian safety." The applicant is requesting that the requirement be deleted. The separation was intended for all sidewalks, including the proposed sidewalk on Josiah Path. Deleting this requirement would result in an unsafe situation for the sidewalk along Josiah Path, which the applicant is not requesting relief from providing. The proposed design is a mountable curb directly adjacent to the sidewalk, providing no separation of vehicular traffic and pedestrians. We recommend that the proposed sidewalk on Josiah Path be separated from the roadway surface by either a grass strip or vertical curb. If relief is granted from the sidewalk requirements along Brook Kiln Road, this condition could be modified to read, "The applicant shall provide a sidewalk along the westerly side of the roadway, Josiah Path, to the cul-de-sac. The sidewalk shall be separated from the road by either a grass strip or vertical curb for pedestrian safety." They don't have any comments on the remaining requests. Nothing from the assessor's department. Lauren, do you need me to just summarize the changes looked for, or just have that in the presentation?
I think it's,
Okay. That's okay.
All right, and Jerry, did I have you on the last one?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so I've been going back and forth. Scott, you'll be a voting member on this. And for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Adam Costa. I'm an attorney with the firm of Mead, Tallerman, and Costa. I represent the village at Brook Kiln. Mike Salamondo is here with me this evening. I know that you know him. He was before you many times during the original permitting of this project. You might recall that we were before you, or at least the matter was before you back at your March 24th meeting Prior to that meeting, I had submitted correspondence. In fact, it's the only correspondence you have for me, dated March 1st of 2022, that summarized the 4 changes, and I will address them tonight, but summarize the 4 changes that we're seeking. We, at that time, were requesting that the board consider these to be insubstantial changes. You had we'll call it a lengthy discussion, but a fairly comprehensive discussion at that meeting on March 24th. And of course, the conclusion that you reached was that you disagreed that they were insubstantial. You felt they were substantial. And so we're back here before you this evening to discuss these changes as substantial changes. Those are terms that are used in the Chapter 40B regulations. They're unique to Chapter 40B. They don't exist under Chapter 40A, but there is a difference of process. And so in preparation for tonight's meeting, a public hearing has been published and noticed, and abutters have received notice and so forth as required. We also provided an extension, and I thank you for your accommodation because I was unable to attend your meeting a couple of weeks ago. I was on vacation. So you've heard through the presentation of remarks from a couple of different departments reference to at least 2 of the 4 changes that we're seeking, and I'll go through them. If you have it and you refer to my letter, much of what I'm going to say is captured in the correspondence that I submitted, but I'm going to state it verbally as well, but in somewhat of a summary form, so as to not belabor the points. But I've identified each of these changes as changes 1 through 4. And so the first change that we're seeking and that we're requesting as a change to the comprehensive permit that the board approved is really a point of what my client refers to as clarification. What he believed was the need for clarification based upon the plans that were submitted during the permitting process. As is often the case, and you know this probably as well as I do, when a comprehensive permit application is before the Zoning Board of Appeals, what gets submitted with that application is what used to be referred to generally as concept plans. I know much of the 40B references in secondary sources from the 1990s and early 2000s called these concept plans. I don't see that term used too much these days because boards, quite frankly, require much more than just conceptual drawings. But the idea being that they're permitting plans, they're not construction plans. And very often with permitting plans, what gets submitted is a site plan, sometimes architecturals and elevations, and the details have not been fully determined yet. And so what was submitted, as I understand it, and I've reviewed the submittals that were made through the comprehensive permit process, what was submitted to your board as part of that process was a full plan set, and Mike Borselli is here tonight and can certainly address if the board has specific questions about the plans, those plans that were submitted at the time. But a full plan set, site plans, that showed existing conditions, showed the proposed layout of the site in terms of lot locations, showed proposed potential layouts of different homes within the individual lots, and then went on, of course, with all the detail sheets that are often included in plan sets to cover everything from stormwater to utilities and so forth. Nowhere in your decision is there a specific requirement that a particular house style be constructed on a particular lot. Nowhere in your decision is such a requirement found. However, what your decision does do is it refers back to the sample plan that was submitted showing your board how these houses could be fit or could be placed on these individual lots. And based upon that plan, as if that plan were the only manner in which these lots could be developed, lot 1 with a 3-bedroom, lot 2 with a 4-bedroom, it adds together the bedrooms. And there's a condition in your approval specifically that says a maximum of 69 total bedrooms, including 3 bedrooms for unit 21, which was one of the units, one of the lots on the plan that actually didn't show a house or a specific bedroom count. A maximum of 69 total bedrooms is what can be constructed on the site. Now, that's not entirely consistent with the other data that was presented to the board during the public hearing process, because the other data showed that the septic systems were being designed for up to 90 bedrooms. And so the request that we're making, we don't intend to, in fact, construct 90 full bedrooms, but the request that we've made through this application is that the number be 84, that we have the flexibility with these individual units to modify the bedroom count based upon what the market calls for. Somebody sees a particular lot, they want that lot, but they want a 4-bedroom home instead of the 3-bedroom home that maybe was shown as a potential fit for that lot, that the developer have the flexibility to provide that additional bedroom, that different house style that has 4 bedrooms versus 3 bedrooms on that lot, so long as it complies with the zoning requirements, which, based upon the sizing of the property, any of these house styles, as I understand it, would fit onto any of the individual lots. So that's the first change request that we've made, is really a clarification of that reference, or a change in that reference to a maximum of 69 total bedrooms being a maximum of 84 total bedrooms for the project. And again, that will have no effect on the engineering because the project was engineered in such a way that the infrastructure component that is most related to the bedroom count, which is the septic system, was designed for up to 90 bedrooms. So that's request number one. Request number two is something that was alluded to in one of the responses you received from one of your departments, and that relates to the sidewalk. And I was interested in what I heard, and I tried to follow it along because I think that maybe it says what I'm hoping it says, which is that there isn't necessarily an objection to the elimination of sidewalk, at least not from that department. Obviously, it's within this board's purview in deciding whether to grant the change request. But what I think I heard was that department had no objection necessarily to modification of conditions as it relates to the sidewalk along Brick Kiln, but had concerns with respect to the sidewalk within Josiah Path and specifically the separation of that sidewalk from the actual roadway, whether it be grass strip or granite curb or some mechanism to separate the two. Our request, however, is focused not on the sidewalk within Josiah Path, but is focused on the sidewalk as it exists along Brick Kiln. There's a condition, and it's not something, according to my client, that was really discussed extensively during the public hearing process, but found its way into the decision. There's a condition that the sidewalk be extended for several hundred feet, really in both directions from the intersection of Josiah Path, the proposed roadway for this development, and Brick Kiln. In one direction, in an easterly direction, to the location of I think it's the Lutheran Church, which is approximately 250 to 300 feet away in an easterly direction. And then similarly, there's a requirement that the sidewalk on that same side of the road be constructed a length of approximately 300 feet to a location of an entrance to the town forest. And the entrance is actually in the opposite, I think it's sort of a pull-off, but it's on the opposite side of the roadway from, I guess, where that sidewalk would end. As you can appreciate, constructing 250 to 300 feet of sidewalk in one direction and another 300 feet of sidewalk in another direction, anywhere from 550 to 600 feet of sidewalk comes at a meaningful cost in a development of this sort. And I realize that in most contexts, and I represent many boards like yours, when we're reviewing special permits or variances, we don't have the discussion about cost. Cost is really not within the purview of the board. It's not a concern of the board. This is a 40B, however. And with 40B, what is and is not economic, and that's sort of a term of art in 40B parlance, but what is and is not economic is something that this board needs to consider. The law says it has to be considered, whether a requirement like this would render the project uneconomic. And we put approximate costs, and again, this is all in the correspondence, that would be associated with this sort of construction of a sidewalk. And it's our position that certainly in conjunction with the other conditions, that these conditions, and this one included, render the project or would render the project uneconomic. And I'm going to touch a little bit more on that as we get to maybe the most costly of the conditions, but I won't talk about it here as it relates to the sidewalk. So the simple request for the sidewalk, and it's in my correspondence, is that the conditions that require that there be a sidewalk along the full southerly frontage of the premises, along Brick Kiln Road, to connect with the existing sidewalk at 485 Brick Kiln Road, as well as that the sidewalk be extended to the town forest, be eliminated. Again, we're not asking for any change to the sidewalk as it exists within the site, as it exists along Josiah Path. There's no request to make any modification from the approved plans. Insubstantial change, or I guess it's now substantial change, number 3, as referenced in my correspondence, relates to the water main, and this is another one that was touched upon in one of the correspondences you've received from a municipal department. So there was a back and forth, as I understand it, and you may know it better than I do. I've gotten it secondhand. I wasn't part of the process when this was before you previously, but I have reviewed meeting minutes, I have reviewed materials, I have reviewed the decision. And in fact, much of what I'm about to say is documented. I've quoted in my correspondence directly from your decision and from the findings. So there's a requirement that the water line be 12-inch as opposed to being 8-inch. And my understanding, based upon, again, the findings in the decision, is that there was some back and forth that occurred during the public hearing process about what the appropriate size was. And there's a statement here, and it's similar to what was just read in the correspondence, that the 12-inch water main connection had been requested, quote, to match the town's future plan for an upgrade to a 12-inch main in Brick Kiln Road. And I certainly appreciate that. Again, as somebody who represents municipalities very often, municipalities have plans of action, and that plan of action may include 5 years down the line, 25 years down the line, infrastructure improvement. So I appreciate that that may be the future plan of the town. I also know that generally speaking, and especially in the context of 40B, that future plans of a municipality can't be imposed upon a single development or a single developer. And so there was some back and forth that occurred when this application was originally before you and the process was underway. And in fact, Amory engineers had indicated that an 8-inch ductile iron water main would provide sufficient fire flow. And in fact, the town's own water superintendent, and I'm quoting directly from your decision, accepted and stamped the Amory engineers' report as proof of the designer's compliance with town standards. So the argument that I'm advancing in support of the request that the water main only be 8 inches as opposed to 12 inches is that it's going to be 8 inches coming off Brick Kiln Road and into the project. I don't think there's any dispute that that's the case. That's what the decision requires. That's what the correspondence you read into the record says. But the proposal here is for it to go from 8 inches at the intersection with Brick Kiln Road to 12 inches for the length that it's being extended to where the line ends today within Brick Kiln Road. But the line within Brick Kiln Road is only an 8-inch line. So it's going to go from 8 to 12 back down to 8. I appreciate the desire for that, but again, cost becomes an issue, and we have a cost estimate here in the correspondence. And again, this, especially when it's compiled with the other requests, this is something that imposes meaningful cost on a development, especially a 40B development with a profit cap or a profit limitation. Insubstantial change number 4, and this is from a financial perspective, certainly the most significant or of greatest concern to my client. And again, I'm not going to pretend to be an engineer. We have our engineer here. If you've got specific questions, Mike Borselli can answer those. But there's a requirement in your decision that IA systems D-Night systems be installed for this project. That's something that I'm generally familiar with. I know of other communities that require these in certain locations. It's been a number of years since I've last been involved in a project in Falmouth. So when I got this assignment from my client and took a look at the zoning bylaw, I didn't see a requirement in the zoning bylaw in this location for these sorts of systems. And that was sort of the first thing I noted to myself, that this isn't a requirement of zoning in this sort of location. It is a requirement in a couple of other locations and certain overlay districts, but not a requirement in this particular location. But I understand that there was a discussion had during the public hearing process, and there was a desire, again, I appreciate that, there was a desire expressed by town staff that this is something that be considered and potentially be imposed as a condition of approval, and ultimately it became a condition of approval. The estimated costs of these systems is $500,000. And I know that in a vacuum, that may not mean much. If you got $500,000 systems and you've got a $50 million project, then maybe it's not a big deal. It's a small percentage of the overall project. But again, we have financial data, and I'm happy to share. We have a financial consultant on board that's prepared a pre and post pro forma to give us a sense as to whether this is something that could be done. I'm happy to share that data with you. But it's going to reduce the profitability of this project, frankly, from a number that the state would already consider to be uneconomic to a number that really would prevent this project from proceeding. We're looking this project based upon the numbers that we have as originally proposed to your board. So this is back when it was 32 units and not 28 units. This is back before my client invested an additional $200,000 in the stormwater system. The profitability as a percentage of total development cost was at 6.2%. I know from experience with 40B that DHCD and mass housing standards are typically 13 to 14%. Generally, they consider anything less than 13 to 14% to be uneconomic in the world of 40B, something that a developer would be expected to undertake. But that's where we started. And my client, plenty of developers pursue projects at less than 13 or 14%. My client's intended to pursue a project at 6.2%. But then we ran the numbers, not even including the $200,000 in additional stormwater. We ran the numbers with these various conditions, including the $500,000 for the D-Night systems, and we're at 1.4%. Probably under 1% when you include or close to it, when you include the $200,000 for stormwater. So it's really an economics game for us. We didn't see, and I appreciate a desire being expressed by town officials. Representing town officials, I would tell them to put the lengthiest wish list together they can when a 40B comes before a zoning board of appeals. But a wish list is exactly that. It's a wish list. The question is there a public health or public safety justification? And does that justification outweigh this question of economics? And I can tell you from experience, again, that the HAC generally sides with developers in those scenarios, unless there is significant, substantial evidence of a immediate, imminent public health or safety danger. And I didn't see anything explained to me in the meeting minutes, or certainly not in the decision, that was a public health or public safety justification for this. And it's not a requirement of zoning. So if this were a circumstance where this was required by zoning, and we were seeking a waiver from the requirement, as we can do under 40B, and as was done with some other standards here, and you opted not to grant the waiver, well, that's sort of an expected colloquy that would be occurring between applicant's counsel, the board's consultants. Is there a justification for the waiver? This isn't even a circumstance where we're talking about a waiver. We're simply talking about a requirement that the board imposed upon the project that is not even a requirement of underlying zoning. So that was problematic from our perspective as well. So that sort of summarizes in a nutshell, and I know it wasn't terribly quick, but that summarizes the 4 different requests we've made for what are now deemed substantial changes. We're happy to engage in a dialogue with the board, answer questions the board has. Purposely brought our engineer here tonight so he can address some of these specific questions, because I'm not an engineer and I can't talk about installation of water lines or design of sidewalks, or certainly not IA systems. But Mike is here and can try and answer any questions you might have. And he has some, to the extent you want to see plans. I know there was reference made when you were discussing the insubstantial changes back in late March. Some members said, well, it's been a little while. We'd like to see some plans. I know my client made some submittals to the board electronically prior to tonight, but we also have those available and can bring them up on the screen and can point out any aspects of the project, any questions you might have. What was, I think, the context in which that arose back in late March is, I think one of the members had indicated that we're not being required to extend a full 12-inch main within Brick Kiln. That was only a 12-inch connector, a small piece right at the intersection. And we said if that were the case, we wouldn't be here. It is along the entire length of the improvement within the roadway, and we're happy to answer that by showing you the plans that indicate that. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and happy to answer any questions that the board might have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I had you right at the 15-minute mark anyway, so that worked out
There you go. Great, thank
just
you.
fine. All right, board questions. Scott, do you want to start us off if you have anything?
Oh, well, obviously this project's been around for a little bit, and I wasn't here originally, so a little handicapped, but when we start talking about the sidewalks and water mains and denitrification systems due to the fact that Long Pond's feeling, it all kind of broaches into public health and safety, so I recognize the applicant's thought process, and I guess I need to hear more just from the board because of the institutional knowledge that the board has prior to me joining.
All right,
So I have to defer a little bit until I can get through.
no problem. Bob?
So I guess I'd ask a question. So this decision was filed back in September of '21. So if the applicant had issues with any of these, why didn't they appeal at that time?
So I think there's maybe a few answers to that question, if I could, through you, Mr. Chairman. And I think that the answers sort of may be different, one requested change to another. So in large part, and this goes to the fact that we're largely hanging our hat on economics when we make these requests, as is often the case with substantial or insubstantial changes under 40B, it wasn't appreciated, the cost associated with all these various matters. You don't understand necessarily until you go out to bid what it's going to cost. And sometimes when these topics are discussed through a lengthy public hearing, if there's a clear requirement by the board, if it's either something that exists in zoning or the board says early on, we are not going to approve this project without a condition that you extend the roadway from the Lutheran church to the town forest, the Long Brick Kiln Road, maybe then there's an opportunity through the public hearing process to obtain bids or to get a sense as to what that cost might be, and then to present to the board while the public hearing is still underway, or in an immediate appeal if necessary, why it is that that's going to render the project uneconomic. From my client's perspective, the extent of some of these conditions was a surprise in terms of, and once it was a surprise, the full cost didn't become known until a couple of months, quite frankly, after the decision had issued and the appeal period had passed. So it wasn't appreciated that the cost was going to be so significant to run the sidewalk the length of 550 or 600 feet. It wasn't appreciated that the cost was going to be so significant to size the water main at 12 inches versus at 8 inches, which is what was originally proposed. So in large part with respect to those two, and I guess even with the septic system, it was really an issue of cost. I guess maybe even more so with the septic system.
So I
because-
guess what I would say is that, you know, there were discussions at the time, and I take the bedroom count just for example. So I've been on many of these 40Bs here. This is the first argument I have ever heard on any project that we didn't think we were limited on bedrooms, because we always discuss that specifically, the designs coming in, and yeah, architectural features can change. I know that we had concerns that we had asked for the plans on one of the remaining houses on the lots that were missing, and it was just never supplied. So this board would always look at a lock-in on bedrooms. I've never seen a plan where you wouldn't look at that. As far as, you know, sidewalks and additional costs, which I understand, but even, you know, the length of the sidewalks were known at the time. So, and yeah, costs can go up, but on the other hand, if you're looking at this as an uneconomic economic situation, your sales, values of the homes have also highly increased within the last year and a half, 2 years. You know, that can always change, but that's also an item that you'd look at in whether these are, you know, economic or not. You know, from what the original project was planned for and what the original sales prices are, what are the current estimated marketing of the project if it was built out now versus what the original plans were? And my other question would be on the additional bedrooms that you're saying you want to increase bedrooms. We always also look at bedroom counts on market rate units versus affordable units to make sure there's an equity in the units themselves. So did you break down on the additional bedrooms that you're looking for? How many of those are going to the market rate units and how many of those would be going to the affordable units?
Sure. So the answer is we didn't provide a breakdown. We're happy to engage in that conversation. We would expect, and frankly, even if we weren't to expect, DHCD would require, Mass Housing would require that there be proportionality. That's a requirement of the regulatory agreement process. When they sign off on the locations of the affordable units, they assure themselves that not only are the affordable units not co-located in such a way that they're in one area of the development and not dispersed throughout the development, they also require that they be generally representative of the bedroom count. And that cuts both ways, quite frankly. They don't want a development consisting of 1, 2, 3s, and 4s having all 4-bedroom affordables, even though arguably there's much more of a demand for 3 and 4-bedroom affordables than for 1 or 2s. They want them proportionate. So we would expect them to be proportionate for sure. To your point regarding bedroom cap, I don't, and again, I wasn't part of the process. I don't disagree with you. I can't remember the last time a board I represented or a board I appeared before didn't discuss in the context of
It's just very unusual that,
Right.
that you wouldn't know that you were capped
and
at
I
an
don't,
amount of bedrooms and then suddenly say, well, now I thought I could just add additional ones because I have a larger, you know, I have space in my septic.
and I guess maybe I'm not articulating my point correctly. I don't think it's that my client, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think my client is saying, I didn't expect there would be a limit on the bedrooms. I think he thought the limit on the bedroom was going to be commensurate with what he was designing his system for, and didn't think that he was locking himself in by virtue of saying, look, here's a plan where I could fit house style C on lot 3, that if somebody came in and wanted house style D, which had an additional bedroom, as long as the bedroom count fit into what the system was designed for, he thought that was going to be acceptable. But now he sees that he's locked in based upon that proposal, based upon those specific
But
numbers.
but he also knew that back in September. So that's where
That's
I
fair.
get back to my first, if that was such an issue within economics or issues that he suddenly discovered back in September, why wouldn't he have appealed it during the appeal period, which he had plenty of time for?
Yeah, so I think on
Had
that,
these changes.
I think in that instance, he certainly could have. And didn't.
But why did he choose not to, I guess is my question.
Um,
Because,
I-
well, you know, when we go through these processes on
Yeah.
40Bs, and they're all lengthy, you know, we've had one that's gone almost 2 years. All these items are pretty well discussed at the hearings. And you know, I haven't seen a developer that is left after a decision and not understood what the decision said, or that, you know, I just automatically thought that I could just change it or amend it to different terms. You know, as far as the water with the 12-inch, you know, if it's a future idea of a system and it's not something that's currently required, I don't know how we can put that requirement if it's not current, if the 12-inch part is a future use of the system. But then again, I don't know how the town has written this into their own requirements for the town in general, if this is just something that's an automatic now where it wasn't before.
That's news to me if it's an automatic now and it wasn't before. And quite frankly, if it was, we would seek, and we could now seek a waiver from that requirement, assuming that it's a town requirement. But again, I wasn't aware that it was such a requirement as it was explained to me, and quite frankly, as it reads in the decision, this is just something that was consistent with a master plan for the eventual development of, or expansion of utilities in the town, as most communities have.
That's all I have right now.
All right, thank you, Bob. Scott?
Attorney Costa, through your own testimony, you've stated that you got here after the fact. Are you aware of the fact that the applicant stated on numerous occasions how, as part of his presentation, experienced he was in this field? Numerous times.
Yes, I know that certainly he's told me about the experience he has with.
And he's obviously got the wherewithal to hire a good attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't he have reviewed the decision? I'm sure he was aware of the economical impacts we all live in right now. And it appears to me that all of these, while becoming uneconomic, all add to the safety or the lack thereof of this project. Specifically, the sidewalks that traverse the front of this project. It's not a lot to ask to have sidewalks with that many, especially with the addition of how many units? How many bedrooms?
Between 69 and 84, depending
There you
upon
go.
what you allow.
So part of the denitrifying aspect of the request initially that we were on the fence about and dictated that we had a desire for denitrifying with the number of those bedrooms, don't you think it would have been even a harder hill to climb if he had proposed 84 at that time with respect to denitrifying?
Again, I wasn't involved in the process, so
But you're here now representing your client,
I am.
and
So what-
somebody's got to answer that question, and I guess it's your job to do that, or his.
I think it's a hypothetical. Would it have been a higher hill to climb? I don't know what the board's justification was. I'm here on the record stating to you, I don't think there is a justification for a denitrification system when the zoning bylaw doesn't require it of a developer of any project, let alone a 40B project.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. James, anything?
Questions have been asked. Thank you.
All right, Jerry?
Not at this time. I'm still perplexed.
All right, so Attorney Costa, you're representing tonight that some conditions that are being imposed are uneconomic, right?
That's correct.
And you've also made the representation that you're willing to show us a pro forma.
I am.
And would that open up the door for the ZBA then to retain our own expert under 53G?
So generally, as part of the comprehensive permit process, and I distinguish that from substantial or insubstantial changes, it used to be, I can remember back when I started practicing 16 years ago, it used to be that boards would routinely request pro formas and could routinely request pro formas as part of a comprehensive permit application. When they recodified the state regulations after the Amesbury decision was decided at the HAC back in 2008, the new regulations say that can't occur anymore. The circumstances where a board can require a pro forma is when the board seeks to impose conditions and the applicant responds during the public hearing process that those conditions would render the project uneconomic. And in those circumstances, then the board has the ability to request a pro forma. Now, whether the board can peer review that pro forma is no different than requesting a peer review in any other context. It's often a negotiation with an applicant. You request the pro forma review the same way you would request an engineering review or a stormwater review or an environmental review. The applicant can respond by either agreeing to provide the money in escrow for you to do that, unless you're going to fund it as a town, and then depending upon the answer, you either complete the peer review or not. So I'm not prepared to say it doesn't open the door, but opening the door doesn't necessarily mean it's something that the applicant is willing to commit to in terms of funding the cost of a peer review by the board of a pro forma. And I haven't had that conversation with my client, but if that's something the board wants to explore, if the board is concerned with these economics and believes that the answer to whether these ought to be approved or not as changes rises or falls with the economics, then certainly we can have that discussion. I've heard some other concerns from board members so far that maybe that's not the case, that maybe there's just a belief that public safety or public health sort of wins the day here. Again, I respectfully disagree with that, but that's what I'd say on that point.
All right, thank you. And to your point about it being uneconomic, you'd agree that it's a bit of a moving target if you're allowed to offer 3 up to 4 bedrooms, like it, Board Member Zelinski stated. Okay, so if you want to speak, Mr. Salamano, go right ahead.
It's okay, I can address the moving target. The answer is certainly yes. The way that you would typically run a pro forma, however, is you would base it upon bedroom count. So whether it happens to be, a 3 and a 4 and a 4, or a 3 and a 3, or I shouldn't use the 4s, a 2, a 3 versus a 3, a 3. The idea is you're basing it upon the maximum potential bedrooms. And again, I'm happy to share data, but when we ran our pro forma, it was based upon bedroom count as opposed to being based upon, strictly based upon unit count. But yes, I mean, the HAC has recognized, because this concept of pro forma review is part and parcel of 40B. And 75% of appeals that find their way to the HAC, it's often a battle of the pro formas. So the HAC has recognized that it's a snapshot. It's a snapshot when the project is originally proposed. It's a snapshot during the permitting process before conditions are imposed. And then it's a further snapshot at some point in the future. So I've got 2 snapshots here. I've got a snapshot of what we proposed originally, and then I've got a snapshot of what our consultant did a couple of months ago when these changes were proposed to your board, and that was based upon not only the costs, the hard and soft costs that existed at that time, which right now are elevated, but also based upon sales prices, which right now are elevated to a point that was made by another member earlier. How is that going to change tomorrow, next week, next month, next year? Who knows? It depends upon the economy. If there are economic challenges, maybe the sales prices go down, but maybe the cost of supplies go down too, and so it's a wash. So it's always a snapshot, I would agree with that. But we're dealing with numbers that are well below what the state has considered to be economic. If we were close, it might be a different story. If we were at 12%, it would be a different story. When we're at 1.5%.
So what were the original expected marketability prices when the project was applied for, and what are the marketing prices in today's market? What are the new costs? What have they raised to?
Sure. So I can give you the numbers. I've got them compiled as numbers on each of these pro formas, because that's how the pro formas are structured. But I can reverse the math if you want to get actual numbers. But
Or just an estimate.
yeah, so the way that our consultant did it is totaled the market rate sales prices and then totaled the affordables. And so for market unit sales, and this is going back to
September.
This is going back to, that's correct, and it's back when the proposed number of units was 32, so actually a higher number of units as well. But we had market rate sales, total number was 12,553,000.
How did that break down per unit, though? What's the lowest at a, let's say a 3-bedroom is probably your lowest size unit, correct?
Twos, I think.
Two.
Right?
Two.
Twos, right?
So a 2 or 3-bedroom, just give me an idea what those were at.
Do you recall the original numbers, Mike? Because they're not on the original pro forma. Bob didn't break them out.
Mr. Salamando, again, if you want to speak,
You just
please
come up here.
feel free to come up to the podium. I know there's not too many people here, but again, people watching at FCTV.
Sure.
I can remember, I'm just trying to, I don't have my papers with me, but I think the original,
Just an estimate, I'm not going to
okay,
hold you to it, I just want to
yeah,
base it.
I'm thinking of, it was around 560 for the 2 bedrooms, and we were hoping to get, this is back about 4 years.
Sure.
On the original perform was around, just under, I was trying to get them about 600
So what was, and what are your revised figures now? I'm sure you've had to revise them to figure out what your
Well,
revised figures are.
we got revised figures, but we also got a higher,
No, and I understand the cost of
an
it,
interest
but
rate, and we also got the cost of things are now. We were building, at that time, I think, we were building, under 200,000. Okay, when I originally.
but even with the additional building costs, what were your revised figures now for sales? Estimates.
I'm hoping we're getting there right around 690, 680,
I mean, would it surprise you to know in this town right now that if you tried to get a two-bedroom older home right now, that you pretty much have to be at 550 just to get in the door on offers? You may not know because you may not be down there now, but I guess that's the comparison I'm trying to make. There has been such a explosion, specifically on the Cape, marketability, that on average,
I've read some of the,
I mean, on average, these prices are going up 400, 500,000. So I understand there'll be costs associated because your costs are always higher.
the costs are much higher.
But
And even this permitting cost doubled of what we originally.
But if I was going to
originally
be,
came in
if
with.
the board was going to be looking, or if they ever got into the fact they were looking for a performer, then I would suggest that the performer would also have to show the increased costs in today's market versus before, and then you have to look at the increased costs, because I don't,
Absolutely.
my personal opinion is, and I'd have to go through the figures, I don't think it's as uneconomic as it might. There's a lot of ways you can put uneconomic on paper and, do your statistics. But even if you went over, recent closings and stuff, there's enough information out there right now.
I hope you're right, but I know that the costs of things have gone up tremendously. Just pipe. Come on,
No, I
even to
understand.
fill up my goddamn gas tank today.
We've dealt with
It
multiple.
was $115, all right, just to fill up the truck.
No, we've dealt with multiple 40B projects. They're all different. Of course, they're all marketed different, but in general, on other projects that people thought they were gonna get 400,000 are now closing at 9 to 1 million. So, doesn't mean it's always gonna stay that way, and things can change, and it depends on what the project is, but, it's, the price changes down here have been drastically excessive. I mean, it's shocking to me in general, but I just think you have to take that into consideration when you're looking at.
Are we inching towards maybe a suggestion that maybe a pro forma would help both sides out? Or you're not willing, or maybe the board's not willing to ask for that, or maybe you're not willing to offer it?
We're willing to offer it. I have it here, and I have multiple copies here in the event the board wanted it. I've offered it. I'm happy to provide it. I have a pre and post. We didn't do this when Mike said to me, this project, I think, is uneconomic. I said, Mike, we can't show up with the ZBA and just show them something that you prepared in the back of a napkin. We engaged.
That's more than that for his price.
Well, we engaged Bob Engler with SEB. Bob's been involved with 40B pro formas for as long as I've been practicing, probably 40 years.
So we'd need a contract to review that, 53G or whatever you call it.
May I ask a question?
Just, if we go to a pro forma, if the board, can we still ask them to pay for that?
I think the answer is yes.
Okay, just that's,
To retain our own,
yes, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
just
Sorry.
like anything else, if it was like an engineering review or.
Yeah, that's. Noreen, you look betwixt.
Todd, I think you had a question for the applicant?
Yeah, the pro forma that you're willing to produce tonight, is that pre the request of the 4 items tonight, or were those included as they're written?
Yeah, so that's the idea, that we have 2 pro formas that I've got tonight. One is pre and one is post, because what we would have to establish, what we arguably have to establish for your board, although not all ZBAs require this analysis of the economics, but if you deny these changes, we appeal to the Housing Appeals Committee. The Housing Appeals Committee is going to make us provide this, otherwise we lose. And so I said to my client, you ought to just prepare it now. So it's a pre and post, the way that the HAC would expect a pre and post. We have the original unit count, essentially what was submitted without these conditions, initially, when this project was submitted to Mass Housing to get that project eligibility letter that let him come to you requesting the comprehensive permit. Then our consultant took that same information, read your decision, and incorporated with a focus on these specific conditions. There are some things that are in fact weren't even known to us 2 months ago. Mike told me today when I got here, oh, you didn't know that this additional $200,000 in stormwater work was never part of the original pro forma, and we didn't even deduct that in the new pro forma.
Wasn't there part of that engineering that there was a structure or something that had to be worked around that wasn't identified on the original plans? Was that part of that money you're talking about?
No, that was, remember I had to bring in a special, normally the town of Falmouth, Mike can speak to it? Yeah, why don't you speak to it? Because he can speak to it better than me. Normally the town of, they design to, go ahead.
It's not about what you were alluding to, Board Member Zelinski. What we're referring to is the original design of the drainage system for the site when we applied prior to peer review, Brian Yagasian, was as we routinely had done it in the past. Town of Falmouth subdivision standards for drainage, every by right subdivision in Falmouth. Mr. Yagasian, through his review, said that the project had to be designed to a higher standard of drainage, which changed from the Falmouth subdivision standards, which is basically a 25-year storm event, to the newer standards, in his opinion, that were 100-year storm events. The cost differential between the original drainage design to that more strict design translated to much bigger drainage systems. And the economics translated to an additional $200,000 for just stormwater drainage.
I appreciate that, but that wasn't what I asked.
Oh.
There was, on the original design,
Yes.
there had been some question about a structure or
Yes.
some elements that weren't identified.
Yes.
How much did that cost?
Zero. So what you're alluding to is there was hidden in the chain of title, the town of Falmouth has a drainage easement at the right adjacent to Brick Kiln Road with two catch basins and a head wall with a pipe that discharged into the corner of the land, the corner shared by the Lutheran Church and Mr. Salamano's property. That wasn't identified on the original plans. It has no impact on.
So it doesn't affect
Zero.
lot coverage calculations or
Nothing.
any of that?
No.
Okay.
We have to react to it. We have to shift a couple buildings, which we're working on, but it's de minimis.
Is that before us now?
No. No, because that's not what we're here for. That's not what we applied for. But you asked the question.
No, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I have one more question for Attorney Costa, if you didn't mind.
Go ahead, Scott.
Attorney Costa, just at the risk of sounding facetious, and I don't mean to, at what point during the testimony, you had mentioned something just recent in your testimony tonight that it was conceptual plans, and that was and then they figured that they could be creative on what they. I don't remember any of that being part of the original testimony. That this is a moving, fluid plan that we're going to adjust after the fact. I don't remember any of that. So if you could direct me to that part of the testimony, I'd appreciate it, because maybe I'm wrong and missed something, but I really don't remember that.
No, it's a fair question. It's a question that frankly I asked my client and I asked Mr. Borselli, because they had represented to me that they had presented, and again, I've seen this done, so it's not unusual, where in order to show a board, and I've seen it done outside the 40B context in subdivisions before planning boards, it gets done all the time. When planning boards approve a subdivision, they approve the layout of the roadway and the layout of the individual lots along the roadway. They don't necessarily approve house locations within the lots. Those are dictated by all sorts of things, including sometimes the desire of a particular purchaser. So what was explained to me, and I'm going to let Mike speak to it based upon their firsthand knowledge because they were part of the process. What was explained to me is that yes, a plan was submitted to the board that showed potential locations of houses on the individual lots, like a layout plan that would be presented to a planning board as part of a subdivision application. And then there were also plans presented to the board, architectural or elevation plans that showed the different design styles. Listen, we have seven, I think it was 7 total house styles. Here are the 7 different styles that could be constructed. My client tells me the intention was never to, and quite frankly, even if the board says we think it was to, we're here requesting a change that it not be, that individual styles be locked into individual lots. That's the point. So.
Enough. Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else?
On the request for the additional bedrooms, does that change the size of the homes themselves? Is there gonna be a change on lot coverage? And is, if it's a 2-bedroom and now you want a 4, are you using the actual footprint that it's in now, or are you doing changes to that?
First of all, just to clarify for Scott, I just want to let you know, twice Miriam Barry, who was a former member, she brought up the units, and both times I both mentioned we could switch them out, and it's in the records, and that she was the only one that really asked about the units themselves, Mary, and Noreen asked once too. I've gone over all those,
Mr. Salamando, I'll stop asking you questions if you'll just answer one for me.
Sure, go ahead.
Why didn't you appeal this?
I'd like to say I was waiting to hear from my attorney, and we didn't get it.
Fair enough.
That's the honest.
That's my last question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
So would it change the size of the units, the additional bedrooms?
No, we did change, you've got the final.
We had the
plans.
original estimates of what the styles were, the floor
Right.
plans, but now if you're adding bedrooms, are you needing to add square footage? Because if not,
It would be, not the footprint, but if we added a bedroom, there was one, I think you have one, I forget which one it is, there's an alternate on the F, which makes it a 3-bedroom F.
like a 2-story versus...
Yeah, it's a 2-story versus 1. We keep the same footprint. That's what we tried to do in the event that we had to, because there's a couple of lots that are not compromised but are smaller than the others. So I wanted to keep the footprint the same size. The F unit is our smallest footprint. It's like 40 by 40 or 42 by 42, 42 by 41, I forget.
So the request that was listed in here about that unit 21,
Sure,
which I
that's
assume is the
a
unit that just was
3-bedroom
never
unit.
submitted.
It's an H unit.
Well, one of the questions was, it was repeatedly, even when your counsel was here at the time, is that we just didn't have plans for what it was shown as a blank space.
Right.
So the reason we asked for that and asked for reviews is because somebody could take a project and then all of a sudden, I know it wouldn't be your plans to do it, but they could take that last lot and suddenly we didn't approve it and there's a McMansion that shows up that's completely out of character with the rest of the property.
Noreen made it clear to me that it was going to be, any changes that I had to make, that I'd have to bring it, before.
Oh, I understand that. but
And
in your-
if it's a substantial change, then I would have to bring it before the board. And I was willing to do that.
But in the letter on insubstantial change number 1, it's stating that they didn't want to bring the elevations, floor plans of the proposed dwelling of Unit 24 in front of the board. And that was my question, why?
Excuse me.
It's not you do building, you developing, it's not an unusual request, even if this wasn't a 40B, for someone to say, we'd like to see an estimate of what the plan looks like, where it sits on the lot, setbacks, et cetera.
Yeah.
So why would that be a condition that somebody is uncomfortable with, that it just says, because we never got plans of what would ever appear on that lot? And it never said anywhere it would be one of those other floor plans. And, if it was specific and said that that lot would have to be one of the plans that were submitted, but that's not how it was presented. So why would that be an issue that you wouldn't want to bring that one in front of the board to show what's going to be on that lot?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I don't think it is an issue. And if you're reading my request to suggest that we're attempting to circumvent that, that's then maybe I've not been as articulate as I thought I was. But when I make the request here regarding bedroom count, I simply refer to the fact that condition number 9 says that the project is limited, quote, to a maximum of 69 total bedrooms, and then says in parentheses, which includes 3 bedrooms for unit 21. So I'm just quoting your decision there. And then what I say is the applicant requests changes to the decision to address the foregoing. The applicant requests in condition 9 that the maximum number of bedrooms presently stated to be 69 simply be replaced with 84. The applicant also asked for elimination of the statement in condition 1 that the applicant shall also provide the elevation and floor plans for the proposed dwelling at unit 21 for the board to review and vote, because we'd be building one of the same plans. If we're not locked into a specific house style for a specific unit, and you're simply saying we're approving X number of lots and we're approving X number of house styles, you got to put the house styles where you want on the lots.
So I guess that's one of the problems. When the
Right.
project was presented, for some reason, the oversight or whatever it was shown what all the plans were going to be on every lot except 21 was shown blank. Didn't show a footprint, didn't show an example, and it didn't ever said that we're going to place one of these other style homes on lot 21. So because there was no information and nothing to review, and not a floor plan or something to go by, you don't really leave the board in any other choice to say that when it comes to lot 21, we need to see some kind of a plan because we have absolutely no information what might appear on that lot. And I think that's that's why that lot 21 was referenced. It was, and it wasn't just, and I don't remember, some, I don't know if you were here or not, I know your attorney was here multiple times, but we made requests, could we please have a completion showing something on that lot? If it's one of the other houses, fine. But all the way up to when we were closing the hearings, we were never submitted anything. So that's where that comes from, that 21.
Right,
It just was an unknown.
I don't fault the board
Yeah.
based on that rationale, based on its perspective and what the rest of the decision says about being locked in house style per house style, lot by lot or unit by unit. I don't blame the board for then saying we don't have a unit style for unit 21, so get that to us in the future.
Yeah, it just showed as a blank lot.
Right,
So
I don't-
there's no other way to put it.
Understood.
All right. That's the only questions I have.
Anyone else? Okay, public comment, any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this project? Anyone? All right,
Mr. Chairman, can I make one final remark before you close, if you're planning to close the hearing or deliberate or discuss?
so go right ahead.
Thank you. I've heard a couple of members ask the question, and it's an important legal question about why we didn't appeal, why my client didn't appeal. I understand that in the context of traditional 40A applications that come before you, that could be viewed as problematic. You received a permit, you didn't appeal that permit within the 20-day appeal period. As a consequence of that failure to appeal, you can't then come back on the 21st day or the 30th day or the 90th day and seek amendments to conditions, because essentially there is case law in the context of 40A that says conditional approvals are conditional approvals, and relief conditions that get imposed that you need relief from are treated like denials would be, and you have to appeal them within the appeal period. And the reason that's important in the context of Chapter 40A is because of Chapter 40A, Section 16. Chapter 48, Section 16, not a section that gets referenced very often by boards, is a repetitive application provision of the Zoning Act. And it says there can't be repetitive applications. You can't make the same application within a 2-year period to the board. As a consequence of that, the appeal period is all important in the context of 40A, because once somebody chooses not to appeal, they're essentially barred from appealing for 2 years. And most people that get special permits for whether it's a multifamily development or a deck on the back of their single-family home aren't willing to wait 2 more years. 40B is different. There's no repetitive petition provision in 40B. And in fact, to the contrary, in 40B, both referenced, well, I guess not referenced in the statute, it's in the regulations. There are several sections of the regulations that specifically address this concept of changes and define the difference between substantial and insubstantial changes and the process for seeking those changes and when it requires a public hearing and when it doesn't, and the time frame within which a board must act on the changes that are substantial or insubstantial. The concept of constructive approval if you don't act. The reason why I granted you the extension for tonight, because if you didn't act, it would be deemed a constructive approval. And then the process for appealing that to the HAC. So I just want to highlight that because it's a bit of a nuance, but it's an important one here in terms of, you didn't appeal within 20 days. Okay, well, maybe in retrospect, Mike would have appealed within 20 days. But I don't think, I'm confident that that doesn't have an effect on the substance of our application before you tonight. Now, maybe you don't agree with the substance and you're going to deny it on that basis. That's up to you. But I just want to be clear that that's how this is distinguished from what would, most likely be the case, most often be the case before your board with other types of zoning relief under Chapter 40A as opposed to comprehensive permits under Chapter 40B. Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right. Would like to have
Discussion?
discussion? Anyone want to start us off?
So on the water line, the only thing that I think on the water line is an iffy issue is that 12-inch, because it seems to state here that it's for future, a future date, future use with the town, but the town does list a number and says it's part of their bylaws, so, town is letting us know that on projects, this is what, from now on, this is what they're requiring, so, I don't know if we can require the 12-inch, but they're saying that it's very important to the town that it be that. I have an issue with adding the bedrooms, and also on the septics, and it's because of Long Pond. The original, we switched water superintendents at the time, and if you remember when it was first, I think Steve Rafferty was here when it was first applied. He was very specific on why he had issues with the project, the number of bedrooms, and why he would, like some kind of denitrifying or a system set up there, and because of Long Pond and the aquifer. So, not knowing as much on that, I would rather go on the side of caution and say that that could be a safety issue, and let the people that specialize in that deal with it. The questions regarding the sidewalks, I think the what it's requesting of what needs to be there for the sidewalk, regarding the separation between the main drive and stuff with the grassy strip, I think that's town saying that, and that just seems common for public safety. A car doesn't.
It's always been this board's practice to err on the side of safety.
Yeah, I
with
think
respect
when it
these
gets to
things,
it,
and
we have to stand in for all these departments, but let's face facts, none of us are experts in any of these areas, and the other people are doing it, and we rely on what their expertise is. So, whether the applicant appealed or not, we've dealt with a lot of these projects. I haven't, I don't know if there's been other projects in the town where someone's come back to ask to add bedrooms in. I would hope that if it didn't happen before, it's not a new thing that's always gonna happen in the future, because we're gonna have issues. But personally, I would probably stand on the original decision and, have the, if the applicant appeals to hack, and, the town at that point would have their own representation that goes and submit what the basis is for the town's decision. We could sit here and say that we want performer reviews, but then you sit there and have more meetings, and there's 2 performer reviews, and you're gonna get one. If I was an applicant, my performer review is gonna do what I want, one for the town is gonna do what they want. So, I would probably stand by the decision as it stands, and then if, it allows them to appeal to hack, and if hack has a meeting and they decide this is what the decision's gonna be, that the town would have to abide by whatever that decision is. I think there's enough to stand on.
if HAC wants to overturn our safety concerns, then there's nothing we can do about
No.
that, other than voice our concerns. With all due respect to Mr. Salamando, he purported himself to be highly experienced in this, and he should have been able to read the decision and what the effects are. We all knew what the climate of the economy was and on its way up with respect to pricing. I think that it's too much of an ask, and then use affordability to overshadow the safety aspects of it, especially on a project that's so dense. When you eliminate sidewalks and safety aspects to the public traversing those areas, then you're just asking for trouble, so.
Just to add to both of your points, I do have concerns with procedurally how we got here tonight. There was no appeal taken. Now the applicant's before us with modifications. Bob, you both touched upon the sidewalk and the water main. But just to add to the bedroom count request and then the septic, they kind of fight against each other. If we were to allow an increase in the bed count, then that increases the amount of flow to the area. And then with the septic, we know why we conditioned that, because we wanted the IA system denitrification. Long Pond is the major water source in Falmouth, so if we were to allow an increase in bedroom count from 69 up to 84, or even take the maximum of the septic under 90, but then at the same token waive the IA requirement, then
And I think,
that seems to be an issue
again, on the
with local
missing
concern.
Unit 21, whether this was appealed to HAC or was presented again, they understand that the reason we put that in there was because we weren't supplied with any information, and we were basically saying that anything could appear in that lot, and, if they want to allow one of these other styles on that lot and lock it in, they could do it at that time.
All right, anyone else? No other opinions? All right, so I think did we close? No, I think the hearing's still open.
No, we left it open for discussion, so if there's no other comments, then I'd make a motion to close.
All right, motion to close made by Bob. Second by Scott Peterson, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes unanimously. Hearing is closed. No more testimony may be taken. And as for the board going forward,
I'd make a motion to deny all, the request by the applicant for reasons stated in conversation with respect to safety. All four of them, to me, add to a safety issue.
I'll second.
all right, so a motion was made by Scott and seconded by Bob.
Do we have to vote on each one, or can we put them together?
No, I think, so Noreen, if we do this is deny the modification, do we have, how is that written up on a modification? Do we have to do a denial and base it on the reasons we gave this evening, and then that gets submitted so that, are we just voting on it and that allows them to go forward with their appeal?
Yeah, well, in all fairness, the more specified it is, if they're going to appeal it, it's within their purview to appeal
Right,
this, so
so
the more succinct we are, the better.
But I think the board in general is saying that you're resting on your original decision.
Yes.
And that those specific conditions in your mind haven't changed, and that they did not appeal that at an opportune time.
So we don't have to be more specific than that?
I
That gives
mean,
the general end of town council,
I think
if they
we
do
can-
appeal to HAC and they have to represent the town, then they could always,
I think we can include,
Okay.
what your points have been raised thus far, so.
All right, so that'll be Scott's motion to deny based upon,
the administrator's
The
description of how
administrator's
she do the
description.
denial.
all right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, we do have open meeting items. We have voting the minutes of April 7th, 2022 and April 21st, 2022.
Just April 7th.
All right, just April 7th. Would anyone like to make a motion for just April 7th then?
Motion to accept minutes from April 7th.
All right, motion was made by Bob. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Scott Peterson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. April 21st is tabled. Up next, we have reviewing the draft decision with a possible vote for application number 61-20, Echo Land Development
I
LLC.
forgot all over it. I thought we were over. We were in the open meeting, and I thought, oh, nothing left.
0 Percival Road, Lot 4, and T-Ticket. All right, so has everyone had a chance to review the draft decision?
If everyone's had their chance to review, if they have, and they don't have any changes, Just because my throat's kind of iffy tonight, I'd rather not read over the whole thing. If we're able to just
I mean, it's,
do a blanket of what was in the decision that everybody reviewed.
yeah, I mean, it's based upon a denial, so I think we can vote it in.
Yeah, and she sent it to everyone, so we could just, did anybody have any questions? No questions?
No, I think Jerry's right. We need a motion and a vote.
Yep.
All right, so then I would make a motion to accept.
Oh, who are the voting members on this one? Sorry, gotta get it right.
It's the four of us,
Curie,
wasn't it?
Dugan, Zelinski, Morse.
All right,
Those are the four of you.
So then I would make a motion to accept the draft decision of denial for the Percival Road project as presented to us by the zoning administrator.
I'll second it.
all right, so motion was made by Bob, second by Scott Zelinski. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. All right. Board updates, anything?
Got it already, see?
Nothing for board updates? Board discussion? Any discussion? No? Future agenda items? All right, so the next meeting is May 12th here, 6:30 at Town Hall.